You maybe have been here for the first time and are very humble coordinating board building, so welcome. If you need to take a break at any point, that's fine. There's some drink machines and snack machines at the end of the hallway outside where you came in, and restrooms out in the hallway. Hopefully we'll take a break from time to time at the discretion of our co-chairs, who will be appointed shortly. What I'd like to do first is to just go across the table and have you introduce yourself, say where you're from, and maybe say a few words about what it is that your institution does for radio and television, what you call that degree, what degrees you offer, maybe how many students you have, or any special programs or initiatives or research centers or anything like that that might be of interest to the rest of the group. Before we do that, I should say that we're being broadcast live on YouTube, on the web, and our meeting will be recorded and preserved on YouTube. So if you or your colleagues or your students or your kids want to tune in and see what we did at our meeting, I'll post that link to you as soon as that link's available for when it's all been preserved. That'll be helpful to us too as we try to cobble together the minutes of the meeting of what we did. But you'll see you've got a microphone in front of you. There's a little button that you have to turn on that turns it red if the microphone is on and turns off when it's off. Please remember to turn your mic on when you speak, even if you're speaking to the person just next to you, because they can't hear us on the recording unless the microphones are on. And again, please remember to turn them off too, because if you don't, everything is recorded equally and they can't tell the difference between someone whispering over here and someone talking over here. It happens all the time. So with that, I will let perhaps Dr. Garcia turn her microphone on first and introduce herself.
Hi, Nancy Garcia, West Texas A&M University. Our program is a communication program divided in communication department divided into communication and media communication. So under the media communication, we have advertising and public relations, we have digital media, journalism program, and advertising, public relations, digital media, and journalism program. We do have a radio station, we have a TV station, and we have a newspaper. So this small program, about 200 students. That's it. Did I miss anything? No.
Hi, my name's Catherine Kelly. I'm from Blinn College. Our communication studies department really offers the communication two-year degree program. And it's really more of a survey. We serve as a feeder school mostly for Texas A&M, so it's most of the lower level classes for students to knock those out of the way.
Hello, my name's Christian Raymond. I'm a department chair and a professor in the radio, television, film department at Austin Community College. So we focus a lot on digital storytelling and in video and TV and film, and we have both associate's track, that's a transfer degree, and then a pretty sizable workforce program and certificates, technical training as well. So overall, we have a pretty decent sized program and work with a lot of local schools as well. So.
My name is Todd Chambers. I'm over at Texas Tech University in our College of Media and Communication. The department that we used to call telecommunications, then it became electronic media and communications, will now be part of a journalism and creative media industries. And so they just had the degree change from electronic media and communication to creative media industries. That's probably where the main wheelhouse for RTV courses would be. But our college has 7 different degree programs. All of our majors can participate in our campus radio station. We also have a television broadcast that is primarily for the web, but we also have partnerships with our public TV station on campus. And so we have a lot of students interested in sort of the news. So we have our journalism program. We have a lot of students that will want to kind of do that traditional track called broadcast, but we so anyway, it's across all of our majors really where students are getting experience, I think, in all these different areas.
Hello, my name is Andrea Fuentes. I'm from South Texas College, that's in McAllen. And in our communication department, we do have two different degree paths, communication studies and advertising and public relations. And I do teach on the advertising and public relations side. We do want our students to get a taste for radio, television, and film, so we do offer two courses with that topic. Some of the things that we do on campus is we do have a American Advertising Federation chapter, so they do get to compete in the National Student Advertising Competition. We're also a feeder school to UT-RGV in the Rio Grande Valley, where many of them do end up becoming radio, television, and film majors. Some of the things that we try to do on campus is connect with our community as much as possible. So every year we do have a communication arts festival where we invite people in industry to come and speak to our students and give them that hands-on experience as much as possible. So we try to do what we can in the classroom and connect students to out of classroom experience with hands-on work at the radio stations as much as possible. So that's some of the work that we do at South Texas College.
I'm Ray Niekamp from Texas State University down the road in San Marcos. I'm in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. If you are part of our program, your major is called Mass Communication, and you can specialize in one of 6 different sequences. The one that pertains to what we're doing here today is electronic media.
I'm Andrew Clark from the University of Texas at Arlington. I'm the broadcast sequence coordinator. We're in the Department of Communication. We have about 1,000 majors in the department, about 200 majors in the broadcast sequence. It's a combination of mass comm and comm studies, so we have broadcast, PR, advertising, journalism, communication technology, and then communication studies. We have an online radio station. We have a cable channel that we do programming for. We have a lot of partnerships with a lot of local media entities, and we've got a growing Hispanic media program as well. We do a Spanish language broadcast every week, and we have partnerships with Spanish language stations as well. So, yeah.
My name is Garen Skates. I'm the assistant professor for mass communication at Western Texas College. We're in the middle of everything, close to nowhere. I'm a department of one. And we, in the associate's degree that you get, the Associate of Arts degree that you get there, if you want to, you can list a major in mass communication. And so the courses that I offer, which was a springboard of the CTE program that we had for radio broadcasting, which fell victim to the cost-benefit ratio of keeping that program around. Intro to Mass Comm, of course, audio production, radio, television announcing. My background before higher education was in radio professionally. And we're members of TIPA. As I was talking with Dr. Garcia about, some of my students in the past have gone to West Texas A&M or UT or Texas Tech and some other places. And so we mainly participate in the previously published division of TIPA, and the students have done very well there. We have our own radio station, educationally licensed, one of the few public community colleges to have that, and so we try to utilize it, and I just provide experiences that go to the interest of the students that participate, and try to give them a taste of everything from sports to having their own show to creating production pieces, all those kinds of things.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Edwards. I am lead faculty and program coordinator for journalism and mass communication at Richland College, part of the DCCC in Dallas. Also, my background is a little bit varied as well. I started, the first 10 years were in the radio industry, in the radio newsroom, primarily radio and TV background. Then public relations is where I spent the second trimester of my life, I guess, and I have been at Richland for about 10 years. We offer 2 field of study degrees in mass communication, journalism, and broadcast journalism. We have a online radio station, received a Pinnacle Award a couple of years ago, so we're very proud of our students for that. Also, we have a newspaper, which is the Richland Chronicle won a pacemaker a couple of years ago in Pinnacle, so I'm very, very proud of the work that our students do. We really have the 4 media outlets: radio station, television studio, and as well as the newspaper and online presence. And I think what we really try and do as much as possible is give our students a very hands-on approach. We're blessed to be in the Dallas marketplace. We've got good relationships with radio and TV as well as newspaper in the community, and it's a wonderful opportunity to give our students an opportunity to work with and learn from professionals in the 5th largest television market in the country. So that's really what we try and do, give them a very hands-on approach, so they not only have the educational background, but as the technical expertise as well. Thank you.
I'm Derek Blackwell from Prairie View A&M University, which is northwest of Houston, just outside of Houston. We have a communication program divided into 2 tracks. One is communication studies, and the other is mass comm. And so the mass comm track is pretty broadly structured to incorporate pretty much any media-related careers. While we do have an online student radio station, the majority of our resources and coursework lean more toward television and film. And so, that's it.
Hello, my name is Steve Ames. I'm with Houston Community College. I'm the program coordinator for the audio recording department, which is part of the division is the also has filmmaking and music business. The audio recording has pretty much grown over the last, I don't know, maybe 20 years or something, to where it used to be primarily focused on making records and whatnot, and now we pretty much have different pathways where the students, especially for entry-level work, we have an electronic music certificate, and we're teaching live sound, and the people end up in radio and television all over the place. Even with just the audio background, the discipline seems to be such that they seem to filter into television stations, even into the video aspect, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nancy?
I'm Nancy Boyens from McLennan Community College in Waco. I am the multimedia instructor in the Computer Information Systems Department. Our media offerings are a little bit limited, so I teach 1 course in digital video. We also have on our academic side of campus where we've added an associate degree that's in media communications. And anyway, I've mentored some students who have transferred to other institutions like UT Austin, and that to further their video interest. So again, we're a little bit more limited where we are right now.
Well, that's great. I appreciate it. And again, I'm Alan Mickey, and I can justify my experience here as possibly having the record of the world's worst college radio DJ this would have been like 1986 or something. I don't know if anybody keeps records of such things, but I can't imagine a worse one. So that's my experience being here. So I'll try to shut up and let the pros do the talking. This is great. I mean, this is a nice representative balance of different people from all across the state, different regions of the state, all kinds of different types of faculty with different types of interest and experience. So I'm hoping that this will be a really good cross-section of opinions here today. It's an increasingly rare opportunity for faculty from 2-year and 4-year colleges to get to talk to one another, especially face-to-face in the same room for an extended period of time. Quite often, both 2-year and 4-year institutions make a whole lot of assumptions about what is going on over there without really getting to talk it over about what students need, what students can do, what kind of preparation is necessary, what courses are offering, what courses are requiring certain things. So I hope a lot of that will come up today. So I'm looking forward to a good conversation. A conversation that will be recorded in part by our recording secretary, whom we need to appoint. we need somebody to help me take notes. I'll take some notes, but I need to have a backup of somebody to take some notes. It's not too onerous a task because we'll have the meeting recorded on YouTube and we can fill in the gaps later. So you don't need to record everything that's said by everybody. But we need to have somebody to keep track of the general thread of the conversation. Like we were discussing the inclusion of, MassComm 201 class. Discussion included these pros, these cons, I don't know, just some general things like that. And also to keep track of the exact wording of any motions that are made and a careful count of the votes that are being done. So if we have any volunteers for that, that would be lovely. If you have a laptop, so much the better. If you don't have a laptop but are interested in doing it, don't let that stop you because I can get you a laptop. Oh, thank you. Shall we appoint Raymond Niekamp by acclamation? Okay, all not opposed, raise your hand. Thank you. Our next task is to appoint our 2 co-chairs. Now, we need a co-chair to represent the 4-year institutions, and we need a co-chair to represent the 2-year institutions. I have some guidelines that I can give our 2 co-chairs for some suggestions about how meetings like this typically go. But the job of co-chair is an important one because the co-chair will be the one to actually run this meeting. It's not me. This is your committee, not my committee. So the co-chairs will be the ones to guide the conversation, to call on people to speak, to direct the ebb and flow of things, to make sure we stay on schedule, to decide when it's time to move on, to decide when it's time to take a break, to decide to maybe call a question and put things to a vote, and generally to make sure that we are getting our job done in the time that we have to do it. It's possible we could finish our work today if I shut up and if we move efficiently and if the co-chairs do a good job. We might be able to wrap this up by 5, but I'm not assuming that. That's only happened once in my time here at the coordinating board doing this. So I want us to relax, and it's much more important that we do this right than we do it quickly because the implications of what we're doing here today are really very far-reaching. So quite often what happens is during the first day we lay out the issues. We talk about how a field of study works. We talk about the general parameters of what the discipline needs to look like. And then on the second day, after we've digested all of that, committees sometimes get down to the brass tacks of saying, will it be this course? Will it be that course? Will we have options between courses A, B, and C? That kind of thing. But perhaps we can get it all done today. It's going to be a little complicated, I imagine, because the academic course guide manual is a little vague on radio and television courses. There isn't an RTVMP designation for courses in the ACGM. So in a way, that's very liberating because we have the whole book to choose from. But on the other hand, it makes things a little more complicated because we can't just go, well, let's just pick the 5 radio and television courses in the ACGM, the end, we're done. But I digress. Do we have anyone who would like to nominate someone or nominate themselves first for the 2-year institutions to serve as our co-chair?
Just to get things moving, and only because I sat in on one of his presentations before, and he's in Austin. So if it's, now, I don't have a title, so if it's Dr. Raymond instead of Mr. Raymond, I apologize. Okay, all right. Christian, I'm just going to nominate you because you're in Austin, and I sat in on your presentation. I liked what y'all did, and you can tell I'm from West Texas, what y'all did. Anyway, what you did, and I really don't really know anybody else in the room, so.
Would you agree to the nomination?
No, sure, no, I'd be happy to do my best to co-chair and drive us in the right direction and defeat expectations and maybe even be done today.
There you go. Anyone else from the 2-year institutions would like to be nominated? Okay. Well, all in favor of Christian Raymond from Austin Community College? Thank you, Christian. Appreciate that. And now also for the 4-year institutions. Any nominations?
bunch of broadcasters. We're all pretty reticent.
I know it. I know it. Oh, come on. This looks great on your P&T file. You get to be a committee chairman for a statewide committee. Oh, come on.
I'd be willing to do it if nobody else wants to do it.
Okay. Andrew Clark, any other nominations? Okay. All in favor of Andrew Clark from UT Arlington? Okay, tremendous. Thank you. Thank you both very much. Super. Now, what I would like to do is, I know we've only been meeting for 30 minutes, but I think it's time to take a break. And what we're going to do is I need to take a few minutes to talk with Christian and Andrew about some things about running the meeting. In the meantime, I'll let you get familiar with the coffee machine and the glass of water and maybe take a stretch, and I'll speak with them for about 10 minutes, and then I'll give you an introduction to what fields of study are and how they work. And if I can ask a favor of Andrea and Raymond, the way the cameras are set up here, they like to have the two co-chairs sitting up here in front because they're leading the discussions and everything. Could I ask the two of you to swap seats with Christian and Andrew and let them have these two here in the center while we're talking? Okay, so we'll be adjourned until 1:40. Thank you. I'd like to do a little bit of business where we need to assign term limits to the committee members. It's a little strange. Our term lengths for committee members are a little out of sync with our meeting schedule. That's just a fluke of the coordinating board statutes and rules. Advisory committees such as this have members that are diversified among 1, 2, or 3-year terms, so that there's some overlap as years go by, but people rotate off. Since this is the first time this committee is met, we need to scatter randomly 1, 2, or 3-year terms. This field of study will be revised and looked at again in 5 years. That's when we try to look at each field of study and see if it needs to be updated and call together a new committee. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that I'm giving up to 3-year terms when a new committee won't meet again until 5 years, but that's just the way it goes. I'm hoping that some of you will ask to be appointed on this committee again in 5 years, so that there is some continuity from what we did today to what we do next time. It's perfectly possible that we could have another meeting certainly within the next year, especially if we get lots of public comments to the field of study that we propose. Whatever we do today, by the way, goes out for 30 days to public comment period, and we'll catch all kinds of hell from institutions across the state. Then you'll get to weigh in on whether or not we want to accept those recommendations and make revisions. If we get really complicated or a lot of public comments, we may come back to Austin again to discuss them, or if we want to make big changes, we have to do that. I don't know, 50-50 chance of that, so maybe we'll have another meeting. But we're very technologically sophisticated here at the coordinating board, so I have written down terms on little pieces of paper that I have cut up with scissors and put into an envelope. So what I'm going to do is have you draw a little piece of paper here and see what your term is, and then write your name on it, and then put it back in the envelope in a minute. And you'll see if you draw Gryffindor or Hufflepuff or Slytherin or whichever place you are sorted. Our co-chairs happily get automatic 3-year terms. So.
All right, is everyone ready? Okay, so one of the things that Alan pointed out to us that we thought was important to share with the whole team here is that there's also going to be field of study committees for communications and journalism, and if some of you, I'm sure, may know that, coming up in, I think, the next couple months, you said, Alan? or in a couple weeks. So this is happening pretty soon. So I think that's important to know. We think
Communication, I think, is broad too, so it's probably encompassing some aspects of mass communication, and maybe public relations, advertising, as well as sort of communication studies.
right, which hopefully that'll help us with the focus piece as far as from a radio and television standpoint. So we thought we'd just jump in with some of the questions that were given to us, which to discuss. Which the first.
Actually, Kristen, I'm sorry, but can I?
Oh, sure, please.
Before we do that, can I give my little dog and pony show about how field studies work and what
Please.
they are? Just because I want to set the parameter for the nature of the discussion and stick to the agenda for the public record, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm assuming back there in the booth that this mic is working. If it's not, please let me know. I just want to quickly run through some things about what fields of study are, because you might not really be familiar with them. It's concerning to us here at the coordinating board that not many faculty really know that fields of study even exist, let alone that they're required by law to be following them. So I just wanted to explain that the Field of Study Initiative is part of the coordinating board's larger plan for higher education, our strategic plan. You've got a little flyer there on your desk for our 60 by 30 text plan, which I hope you'll take a look at. You might already be familiar with it. I hope you are. There are four main goals here, and I want to talk about how fields of study are set up to help with each of these four goals. Okay. The first two are completion goals, that by the year 2030, at least 60% of Texans in the age group will have a certificate or a degree, and by the year 2030, at least 550,000 students will complete, in the year 2030, will complete a certificate or some sort of degree of higher education. Those are ambitious but attainable goals if we really put our shoulder to the wheel on this. Part of the problem here with these completion goals are what's happening and what's going on with transfer students. Completion rates and the time to degree for transfer students consistently lag behind those of native students. When I mean native students, those are students who begin and end their degree at the same institution. Okay. For example, in the fall 2012 cohort, the completion rate for native students was 84%, and the completion rate for transfer students was much less than that, at 67%. Now, everybody knows that this is a problem, that transfer retention and completion is an issue, and institutions across Texas have really been creative and impressive in their outreach on this. There's been, as we say here, improvements to advising, orientation, peer support, first-year experiences, recruitment on college campuses. All kinds of things are going on. The coordinating board is trying to do what we can for statewide initiatives. We're trying not to get too involved in what each campus does. That's their own prerogative. But we want to do what we can for the entire state. And the field of study is one important way that we're doing this. The next two goals of students are continuing with these first two goals about completion rates. What we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize the time and the hours to degrees for students across the board, but especially for transfer students, because transfer students have historically had real problems with this. And for example here, the statewide average for native students is 5.5 years to graduate with 10.1 semesters and 134.8 semester credit hours attempted. But for transfer students, look at the big difference, 7.6 years to graduate, 2 full years longer to get the degree for transfer students than it's taking native students. That is what we're here today to try to fix for our radio and television students. They're graduating with 11.4 semesters and 142 semester credit hours attempted. Now you can see the difference between the 134.8 and the 142. That's not a big difference. Transfer students aren't necessarily attempting a whole lot more semester credit hours than native students, but they're taking much longer to graduate. In some ways, that's not really a surprise, because often community college students are, the reason why they're in a community college is because they have to stay local. They're either working full-time, they've got families, they're not taking a full load like many native students do. So what we're trying to do with field of study is putting together committees like this with committee members drawn equally from community colleges and universities from across the state to consider courses for how they prepare students for success in the major and the careers to which those majors lead. Our top priority here is to prepare students for success in the upper division level courses. That's the main question we need to answer today, and the question you need to be asking yourself while we're going through these courses. Don't put a course in the field of study just because it would be convenient or because it's already offered many places or there's faculty hiring issues involved. Those things will work themselves out, or is offered in the core or not. Those things will work themselves out. Our question, our problem is, what can we do to make sure that every radio and television student who transfers from a community college is fully prepared to do well in the upper division level courses and will graduate with a minimum number of extra semester credit hours that they either took because they didn't have to, or took and had to drop out of, or failed because they just weren't prepared for that. Now, what a program of study is it's a block of lower division courses that are guaranteed to transfer and apply. Okay? By doing this, if we can reduce the time to degree, we are reducing the cost of degrees, which is contributing towards our final goal, an important one, of reducing student debt. One of the goals is to, by 2030, not have student loan debt exceed 60% of first-year wages. Okay, our state legislatures are getting an earful from their constituents about the cost of college tuition and the rising amount of student debt. Okay, and this is one way that the state is trying by law to respond to it with the field of study statutes. And this adds up to real money. If you look at the way this works here, like in 2017, Native students took an average excess of 14 semester credit hours. Transfer students took an excess of 26 semester credit hours. That's one full academic year of courses that they did not need to take. A full year of college that they did need to go to, because those courses either didn't transfer, or if they did transfer for credit, they didn't apply towards the degree. Okay. In a field of study, every course is guaranteed to transfer and apply to the degree program. So students who follow a field of study that's published across the state will know exactly what courses to take, and by omission, what courses not to take, as soon as they enroll, or even while they're still in high school and begin taking dual credit courses. Okay. And you can see how this adds up to real money. If a student takes, let's say, 3 courses that didn't apply to their degree program, okay? Average college costs are $812 per course, well, $813 per course for, I'm sorry, 200, for one course, the average college cost is $271. For a university course, it's $846 rounded up, okay? So if a student takes a course at a college and then they transfer to a university and the university says, no, we can't take that course, you have to take this one instead, then the student, you see, has taken 2 courses, one at the college that they couldn't use, one at the university they had to use, okay? So if they did that with one course, they're out of pocket, over $1,000. If they took 5 extra courses that they couldn't use, they're out of pocket for $5,000, almost $5,600. And remember what I just said, the average excess semester credit hours for transfer students was a full year of courses. So we're, upwards to we could save students $10,000 today by telling them the classes that are guaranteed to transfer if they take them, and which courses not to take if they're not in the field of study. So this is what we're trying to do with the Field of Study Initiative. It's one part of what we're trying to do. The field of study is one part of the whole portfolio here. We require degree plan and advising for students who accumulate 30 semester credit hours, so they're not just flying blind in their degrees. We have, as you all know, a 42 semester credit core curriculum that is required of all students in Texas and is guaranteed to transfer as a completed block for transfer students. If a student's completed the core curriculum at one public institution in Texas, they've completed it at all public institutions in Texas. We have the Academic Course Guide Manual, or the ACGM, which we'll be talking about a whole lot today, which is like the phone book, the list of courses that community colleges can teach that are guaranteed to receive state funding and are guaranteed to transfer. Not guaranteed to apply, but guaranteed to transfer. We have the Common Course Numbering System, with a couple of exceptions of institutions, especially UT Austin. But even so, those courses are all mapped to the Common Course Numbering System. And we also have programs of study, which is not to be confused with fields of study. Programs of study is to workforce programs what fields of study are to academic programs. Programs of study have committees much like this one that consist of high school teachers as well as college teachers as well as representatives from the workforce to talk about, for something like for welding, for example, where they could talk about what courses students can begin taking in high school, continue to take at college, and then will guarantee to prepare them efficiently for a steady, uninterrupted, smooth, efficient pipeline straight into the workforce. And those are similar in some ways to what we've got going on here with fields of study. So this is worth looking at in detail, because this is what field of study is and isn't, okay? If a student successfully completes a field of study curriculum developed by the board, that block of courses may be transferred to a general academic teaching institution and must be substituted for that institution's lower division requirements for the degree program for the field of study into which the student transfers, and the student shall receive full academic credit towards the degree program for the block of courses transferred. Now, the zinger in this, you may have already caught it, the zinger in here is must be substituted. Okay? That means our field of study is the lower division requirements for all the universities in Texas. That means a university cannot add anything to the field of study. If a student comes in with a complete field of study in radio and television and then transfers to Texas Tech cannot then say, fine, but you also still have to take these 3 other courses we require at the 2000 level. The student is finished with their lower division requirements. When they've completed the core and they've completed the field of study and they transfer, Texas says they are juniors. Okay? So I'm just impressing upon you the seriousness of the selection here. Okay, we need to pick courses that we know or believe will and should be accepted towards degree programs at institutions across the state. You might not want to, if a course is only offered at a handful of colleges and it's only accepted and applies towards a degree program at maybe 1 or 2 universities, that course might not be the best fit for a field of study. You see why? Because over time, universities have used their collective wisdom and the desires and workforce needs of their students to decide, quite intelligently, that this isn't a course our students need. We're not going to require this one. But on the other hand, if we look across and we see that almost all institutions, or many of them, are requiring and accepting this course, it's essential, it covers essential background knowledge for all students to have, then that's a great course for the field of study. Because we want to get the balance just right of not having so many courses that we're restricting the freedom of choice for students when they get to the upper division. But on the other hand, we don't want to have too few courses where we're not preparing students well for everything they need to know in the first 2 years and for their success, continued success as a major. Do you have a question?
Oh, I had a question, actually. So how does that apply, Alan, to naming conventions at different schools? For example, like we've talked about, some programs are mass communication, and some are radio and television, some are radio, television, film. How does that apply? We should just assume that any program that has radio and television, from a naming convention standpoint in it, this applies to, as far as for the 2-year and the 4-year partners?
It's tricky. There's no easy solution to that.
Right.
Often for statewide things like this, we like to lean on the CIP codes. For those of you who don't know, that's the Classification of Instructional Programs number. And I sent you a document that has the programs in the CIP code, the umbrella for radio and television. Communications is something, as Christian already said, communications and journalism will already be covered by a separate committee like this one to determine their own fields of study. Your field of study can overlap with that, fine. If your field of study is exactly the same as what communication studies picks out, fine. I suspect it won't be identical to journalism, but it might be very similar to communications, and that's okay. But I need this committee to tell me what your field of study should apply to and what it should not apply to, okay? And I gave you a list of what different universities are calling these programs. You know, they range from everything from very traditional or even old-fashioned radio and television to, you know, integrated digital communication studies or something, and that's all fine. But we need to know if you think there are some programs for which this field of study are just inappropriate, then certainly tell me that. Like if there are production programs, I'm not an expert here, so forgive me if I'm saying something stupid. If a school has a program in audio engineering, for example, is that covered by our field of study? So that's a question that I want us to answer after we've picked out our courses. Okay. So what we're picking out is the complete list of all the lower division courses required for the major, no more and no less. The courses can overlap with the core curriculum, which is fine. If a course can count towards a core curriculum option, it's great. It can count towards both. A student can graduate with an associate degree, walk through graduation, put the diploma on the wall, right? If they have either a completed core curriculum or a board-approved field of study, as long as they've got 60 semester credit hours, with either the complete core or the field of study. So that's important, because if our field of study is large and a student can't complete it in 2 years along with the full core, they can finish their core later after transfer. Okay. If a student, of course, completes only part of the field of study, then those courses will transfer and they'll have to finish the rest of them later. Okay. The reason why we're doing this isn't just meanness on the part of the coordinating board or an evil scheme or something. This is coming straight from the state legislature. They are trying to do what they can to help transfer students, and you're going to see more of this in the next legislative session. The issues of transfer students are very important, because as you, I'm sure, have noticed on your campuses, more and more students are taking their core curricula at their local community college for half the price or a quarter of the price before they transfer to the more expensive universities for their upper division coursework. Texas likes this. It's good for communities, right? It's good for the regions. It's saving the students a lot of money, and it's saving the state quite a bit of money as well. For what the state contributes to higher education. Community colleges is a much more efficient economic model for the first 2 years. So the legislature likes that. But transfer students are in turn having lots of problems with a course may be applied to their degree over here, but not over here, and maybe over there. A course that UT Austin will take isn't the course that they'll take at Texas State, right? And so students are doing the best they can, taking the courses that they think will work towards their degree, and then finding out in transfer that they have to take a whole nother semester all over again for courses that are similar but not identical to the ones they took at community college. That's what we're going to fix today. Okay. So the legislature wants us to have completed 25 of these by the time the legislature starts, and we're going to have about 30 of them done by the end of January. Here's the ones we've already completed, quite a few of them. And the ones we've got coming up for the rest of this year are up here. Journalism will be coming up early in 2019. So the journalism and the communications committees will have the benefit of your deliberations here today to help inform them of how this might work for their disciplines. Okay. Uh-huh.
So it says completed field of study communication.
Oh, right. There is already a field of study for communication, and the meeting that's coming up is their 5-year revision of the old.
So there's already, that committee's been meeting.
There's already a field of study for communication. Okay. Did I send it to you? Part of the package?
I don't believe so.
I could pull it up if you're interested when the time comes, and you can take a look at what is already on the books for
So that could,
communication.
there has been a field of study committee for communication.
There has been.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay. Okay. What we'll do today, we've got an equal number of representatives from 2- and 4-year institutions drawn from across the state. You're going to look at the courses that are available in the Academic Course Guide Manual. I listed what I thought were the most immediately appropriate ones in that worksheet I gave to you. I may not have gotten it right. You may notice that there are several other courses in the ACGM that you think should be considered, and that's beautiful if you do. And also, in terms of the ACGM, be aware that this committee has got some power over the ACGM, because if we feel like an existing course in the ACGM needs to be adapted or changed in order to work for the field of study, we can do that. If we need to change the learning objectives or the content or the description of that course, this committee can do that for an ACGM course. And in rare situations, this committee can even add a new course to the ACGM. Now, we can't do that just because we think it would be cool if there were a course in this, but it has to be a course that we are going to put into our field of study and that we are certain that every student needs. Like, for example, the psychology committee met not too long ago, and they decided that 2 courses, one course in abnormal psychology and another course in biological psychology, dealing with brain function and chemistry and all that those needed to be bumped down from upper division level courses to lower division level courses and included in the field of study for psychology majors, because they thought everybody needs an introduction to brain physiology and abnormal psychology early in their program to do that. So that would be an example of a situation where a new course was created for the ACGM, not created out of whole cloth, but created from existing upper division level courses that are familiar and important for the major. Now, here's 2 examples of a field of study and how it works, okay? This is a simple one, okay? This is Mexican American Studies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18 semester credit hours, which fits nicely into a 60-hour degree program, right? Because remember, the core is 42 hours. An associate degree is 60 hours, right? 60 minus 42 is 18. So a good rule of thumb, you don't have to go exactly by this, but a rule of thumb is that an 18-hour field of study works nicely because a student can complete it and the core curriculum and still be on time. In practice, often a course in a field of study will overlap with core curriculum options at most institutions. So a course can do double duty, so a student may actually have a little bit more than 60 hours to play with. But this is pretty straightforward. They wanted an introductory course, a history course, a government course. It's a nice range of things that are covered here: history, government, fine arts, a good solid introduction to the Mexican American experience. The courses that they picked from the ACGM are kind of no-brainers. They all have Mexican American in the title, except for the obvious addition of any Spanish course. So there's a little bit of freedom and option for the student in there where they can pick the Spanish course, Spanish language course, that's most appropriate. That's a pretty simple and straightforward one. This one is not simple and straightforward. This is civil engineering, okay? This was a 39 semester credit hour behemoth, okay? There is no way a student could complete this field of study and a 42-hour core curriculum in 60 semester credit hours. So this would be a case where if a student did all of these courses, they would earn the associate degree with 60 hours. Okay, they could finish their core later after transfer. Okay, you'll notice that the courses here for civil engineering vary across all kinds of different disciplines. There's not just engineering courses. There's math courses, there's chemistry courses, there's physics courses. Okay, the courses are done in sequence as well. You can't take Calculus 3 without taking Calculus 2, without taking Calculus 1. So these things need to be considered. So this is this sort of 2 polar extremes of how a field of study can look. Okay. And finally, my last word on this is that the field of study isn't effective if it isn't used. And I encourage you as members of this committee to act as ambassadors for this committee and to help persuade your institution and your system institutions and your district institutions to be aware of this field of study, to please speak to your departments, to speak to your colleagues in RTVMP. If you have professional meetings, if you have listservs, Facebook groups, if you have ways to have outreach to your colleagues in your profession, to make sure that they know that this is coming up and that they need to be accounting for this as they put together their faculty assignments, as they put together their schedules, as they consider their course offerings, as their curriculum committees meet to discuss how things go on. Now, every institution has got the right to determine their own curriculum for their own native students. We can't change that by state law. All we can do is that by state law say that the field of study courses have to transfer and apply to the degree program. For native students, we don't have control over that. So if your university wants to assign completely different courses at the lower division to your native students, you can do that. But can you see the problem here with this is that over time there's going to be an education gap between what your transfer students know and what your native students know. And we're hoping that over time those two things will converge and those gaps will start to disappear. And your native students and your transfer students will have the same courses at about the same time and everybody will be on the same page together. And we need the participation of institutions across the state to make that happen. Okay. And just to clarify, this doesn't mean that every state is required by law to offer these courses in the field of study. That goes for the colleges as well. You don't have to offer these courses. If you do, you're doing your students a favor because you're going to make sure those courses transfer and apply. If you can't offer them, if you don't have the staff to offer it, if you don't have the expertise in your faculty to offer it, if you don't have room in your schedule or have the money to pay your adjuncts, we understand. That's all right. Students will transfer with what they can get when they can get it. And that's the best we can do, and that's okay. But we need institutions to be encouraged to try to develop these courses to make sure they're offered as widely as possible across the state, and students will be benefiting all up and down the entire pipeline to the degree. Okay. Any questions or comments?
Alan, I think it'd be really beneficial if we could see the communication field of study. I think it would just be helpful for us to get a sense of what's on there. I mean, it's possible that some of the courses on there may be able to be included in here or may not be, I don't know, but I think it would be useful. While he's doing that, I think the first thing that we really should do, and just kind of talking about it a little bit, Christian, myself, is to look at the ACGM. And so there's Alan's pulled out a list of courses that he felt sort of fit. And we could either really do it one of two ways, either eliminate those courses that we don't think should fit, and then we can talk about those that are left.
Before we get there, and Alan may be able to help answer this, but it kind of goes back to the naming issue. Because I was looking at the list of programs, there's only 4 programs in the state of Texas that are radio, TV, film. So as a point of clarification, is this field of study only for programs that offer radio, TV, film degrees? Does that make sense?
That's a good question. I see. I read it as just radio and TV, as opposed to and not including film. I don't see film really as part of it. So I'm looking at it more as
does that make
radio
sense?
TV.
So in other words, because there's only 4 radio TV programs. There's only 2 with radio, TV, film. And so my question is this only for those? I mean, for programs that offer that degree, is this field of study committee putting together for that, or is this going to apply for? So I guess that's my question.
Well, yeah, that's I want the opinion of this committee to do that because I want to hear from the experts on that before we decide to what programs this field of study should apply. I believe I highlighted in that list of the programs that are offered, I may have highlighted some that are sort of questionable. Did I highlight some as ones that maybe we need to discuss? I don't know. Does, if there's communications, obviously, which is separate, But what do we do about something like media communications? Is there
Right, and then there's
RTV,
classes that are like emerging media, which may very well be radio, TV oriented. So, right.
There's media history, but on the other hand, there's media production. Two completely different things. Do they belong under the same umbrella with the same field of study? These are all important questions that I think we need to.
Well,
Aaron, you had, sorry.
Well, I was going to say the other thing, coming from a two-year college perspective, and when we had a CTE program, I looked at it as the instructor on what are they going to transfer, or should they be prepared to work in the field when they get out? So the courses that we kept in mass communication under the COM nomenclature, without the RTVB existing anymore, at our institution, I mean, was kind of a general broad thing. For example, like COM 2315, news reporting is probably something that maybe would go with the journalism part, but I offer it because if a student doesn't get to Texas Tech or somewhere, then at least they've had that experience or that exposure if they want to pursue that. So there are some things that we offer. When I was going through this worksheet that we had emailed to us, and I was picking all of those courses, there are some things that I almost put down automatically as a definitely yes, but then I thought about it, and when, as Christian said about the journalism and the communications meeting separately, I said, okay, if they're going to meet separately, then this needs to go away, then this needs to go away. But understand, I'm thinking about it, transfer, yes, but also in practicality, earning a paycheck, And but at a two-year school, you end up thinking a lot that way because you don't know that they're going to, you want them to go on, but you don't know that they're going to. So I think when whatever's chosen, we look at it. Preparation, transfer, obviously that's the key focal point, but at least enough of a taste that if they end up, something happens in life, and they don't transfer right away, they have some kind of a skill set. But that, I know that's getting a CT area, and I apologize, but it's just a viewpoint.
Well, you can see some of that reflected in this huge, crazy field of study for communication that they put together. One reason why we're having separate committees is because there's clearly distinct fields of study here that belong to advertising, public relations, journalism, mass comm, RTV, EMP. I keep calling it that. I'm not sure that's what anybody else calls it. Radio and television broadcasting. And then general communications, right? We decided this time to break those up into separate things because this one communications field of study was trying to do everything for everybody. And as you can see, the list of classes, it's a very little help here. It offers almost no clarity. In fact, it confuses the issue because all it says is pick 6 to 9 semester credit hours. Well, okay, do I pick how many classes, 2 or 3? That's my first question as a transfer student. If I'm picking 2, is that too few? I mean, what? And same thing, then they've divided it up kind of by theme, historical, theoretical analysis, and then writing, performance, production. And then they have another wide selection of choices on the bottom there. So this isn't a whole lot better than a student just flipping through the academic course guide manual and doing what they think is best. I want something that looks a whole lot more like that Mexican-American field of study I showed you. Take this course, then take this course, take this course, take these 6 courses. Maybe you have a little choice and a little bit here and there, but take these, you're done. Okay, that's what's going to really help students and institutions with their clarity. So as you can see, the communications committee has got their job, cut out for them, trying to take a weed whacker to this and boil it down to the essentials. But, I mean, it's worth looking here. Let me see if I can blow this up so that you can maybe see it a little better. Take a look at what they picked out for radio and television. Can you see that a little better? Intro to film, intro to mass comm, intro to technology and human communication, media literacy, survey of radio and TV. select 6 to 9 semester credit hours from that. So select 2 or 3 of those courses. Then for their theme of production, they choose how many was it? Choose 1 to 3 courses in audio, radio production, interviewing, cinematic production, news gathering and writing 1, news gathering and writing 2, RTV announcing, RTV news, TV production 1 and 2, and writing for radio, TV, and film. So these are courses, if it's helpful to you, these are courses that are already being offered, already being accepted at universities across the state. You could do worse than to start with these as a starting point, because we know for sure that these courses are already well established across the state. Okay, so with this, if there's no more questions, it's long past time to turn this over to our co-chairs. Any questions?
So, just clarification, so that is the broadcast journalism FOS though, right? That's not, that's
under communication.
That's not just radio and TV.
Oh, yeah.
What we're talking about.
I'm sorry, you're right. I saw radio and television and then started talking.
That's not not previous legwork that's been done for us.
That's an excellent point, isn't it? There's no real strictly RTV.
That goes back to combining everything for everybody.
Right.
When we had the CT program, that's what I did. I said, all right, I don't know where you're all going to end up, but I'm going to fill your head with a little bit of everything.
It seems like RTV is in their historical, theoretical, analytical family of broadcast journalism. But what's going to be the difference between the radio and television broadcast journalism versus journalism mass comm? And certainly some of the mass comm courses might apply better to radio and television. So like I said, I'm going to be really happy to get this one deleted and replace it with what we're going to be producing here in the next couple of weeks. Okay.
Well, I think based on that, we need to really figure out.
Find what we mean by radio and television.
What do we mean by radio and television, and exactly, who we doing. I mean, I'll just start just in my institution. I mean, we have what we call a broadcast sequence. Some people call it broadcast journalism, but it's focused solely on radio and television. Now, I mean, I know broadcast is still sort of somewhat antiquated, but we have incorporated new media within courses, but we still title it as broadcast, or which would be equivalent to me to radio and television. Film in our area is a complete separate area in a separate department.
Right, and I mean, just to give the sort of the 2-year perspective on that, of course, because we have many fewer credits to play with, generally speaking, radio TV program has had a more general focus, but has, at least in our program, speaking personally, we have tried to really focus on, okay, from a future standpoint, what are the things we should be thinking about mixing production and studies from a standpoint, okay, we have a broadcast class, then that, how are we incorporating things like, VR graphics into that? How are we giving a foundation in just digital storytelling, video production, converging media sort of across the board, which is really sort of central to, digital media storytelling, which incorporates, encompasses almost everything we're doing here. So,
other thoughts or examples from your institutions?
I mean, our school is mostly mass comm, and we have some great digital arts programs that talk about digital storytelling, but that's completely separate department. And so as I hear these incredible course offerings that you guys have, I look at what we offer, and it's going to be mass comm, media writing, public speaking, where we wouldn't be able to build the FOS as you guys are describing these really great but specific courses.
Well, I think as Ellen said too, I mean, you can do what you can do, and it's not the pressure to offer all of those courses. So, if you're offering sort of something to do with radio and television, then, maybe there's just one course that you think that really fits, and we don't have to, and there's no pressure to pick 6, and your institution has to take all 6 or whatever.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. I guess the point of my comment was more that I think that other departments are offering some really interesting courses that cover similar to same material that these very specific courses are. And instead of looking at, a radio writing for radio course, the more widely offered media writing, or instead of digital storytelling, perhaps a design course, which covers a lot of the same basic material. That's going to be a lot more basics and broadly focused, but would be more widely applicable.
Yeah, you look at things like when I was going through this worksheet, and I see something on there like video production. Now, radio as I knew it when I was some of your all's ages, we never thought about that. But now, you have live streaming. They have their Facebook pages, their social media sites. They stream, and video has encroached upon the traditional field of radio. But a video course may be something that if you can fit it in at the 2-year school, fine. But the 4-year school will probably have it. And I know like Austin has great, video stuff. We don't, but at least I could say, whenever you're transferring, if you want to spend a year at Austin Community College and do some extra video stuff, you can, or if you're going to go right to UT or Texas Tech or West Texas A&M or wherever, you can get a taste of that. So.
And it's interesting, the video production, looking at the description, it's really studio production too. That's the other part of it as well. And it's, I would almost, and I'm probably getting ahead of ourselves, but almost look at something like that and say that needs to be renamed to be a little bit more specific if we're going to keep with the same description that is here.
Right, and that used to be, we were just talking, that used to be called TV production. And I don't know why or how that got changed, but it changed to video production, which, from my 4-year experience, knowing that a number of schools teach an introductory production class in the first 2 years as well. So, but could be very different from that class if it's taught as a broadcast video production class. Right.
Exactly.
Right. And of course you have the same course and you teach it different ways, like the media writing. I've always pushed that because to me, writing is so obviously critical in every area. But it's like if you can understand how to write a story, a news story, even though I know that's broadcast journalism, if you understand how to write a broadcast news story for radio, it bleeds into television and bleeds into digital media storytelling, and if you want to accent the television part when you get to tech or wherever, then by all means, So that's why if I was going to think about changing in our own institution, as last night I was thinking about this, I thought, well, maybe I need to get rid of COM 2315, recommend to my institution, let's get rid of that if that's going to be under broadcast journalism specifically, and substitute something else that is going to transfer.
Andrea?
Yes, so we've had some challenges with our students in transferring from South Texas College to UTRGV because of the names. And so, for example, we offer a class called Writing for Radio, Television, and Film, but the only, transferring then over to UTRGV, the class is Writing for Mass Media. Or you've got potentially multimedia story, a variety of other ones, but Writing for Mass Media is the one that we were looking at to transfer as a one-for-one, and it just wasn't working. Also, the name is different. There it is a mass comm degree at UTRGV and under broadcast, and so it isn't called radio TV under broadcast. So those are some of the challenges we're having with students saying, but I took a Writing for TV, Radio and Film course. I'm looking at the syllabus in this class. We're doing the same things. The name's different, what's going on there. So that's just a small example of some of the challenges we're having with the names.
So, Alan, will we have, when we were talking about this, the ability to, when whatever program we, design together, actually look at the zip codes and say, we believe these match up with this, these zip code degree names? Because I think obviously that.
Well, yeah, no, the CIP codes is a national thing. there's some, I forget the name of it, some national board or council or something that defines the CIP codes and uses them nationwide for data collection all across the country. So we don't have any authority over telling them what they should name or rename their CIP codes. In Texas, we can create our own sub-CIP codes by adding, we add 2 extra little, we're the only state that does it, adds 2 other little numbers at the end of our CIP codes. So instead of 51.0101, in Texas it might be 51.0101.02, which accounts for a little sub-discipline that's appropriate to Texas institutions. But that's as far as we could go. We can't change the name from the rather antique sounding radio and television.
Okay, so yeah, I just want to make sure that, the work we do here does what we're intending it to do, so that a class that we try to match up will match up, right, with the program. So, okay.
At Texas State, the advisors shoulder a lot of that load, trying to interpret what classes will transfer meeting, our requirements. I had a terrible situation 10 or 12 years ago where a young lady said, I could take your video production course, but it would be the 3rd time I've taken the same course, and I want to avoid that. And I cooked up a way for her to test out of it and got special permission from the dean to allow her to do that. Since then, the advisors have been trained to watch for keywords, for want of a better term, to see if the material is similar to what we would offer.
Any other thoughts? Yeah, so.
I don't know if we've fully figured out like what radio and television is, but when I was looking at the communications FOS and the kind of 4 categories they had drawn up, it seems to me like the real distinction that they were making with this as a part to the other 3 had to do with technology,
Exactly.
hence the name, and also production. And so I don't know if that it sounds like it might pose a problem in some 2-year spaces where the technology is not available or the production opportunities aren't available. But that was what I thought was kind of the unique characteristic of radio and TV as they defined it. I don't know if we agree on that, but I think that's...
No, I think you're right. And I think the other thing, too, is that increasingly there's proprietary software and other things like that. I mean, we work with the Scott Company and have that in our TV studio. So one of the things that our students will learn early on is how to use the content management system. And the way that we've set up our sequence very much is that you learn these basics early on, and then you're able to utilize it as you go throughout the sequence. And so, my concern is sort of saying, all right, you can transfer this class in, but you're transferring in a class that only has given you some studio experience but no field experience, or you've had experience using it but you really don't understand how to use the content management system and the other things that we're using that are so key. And so you're right, technology is an issue in both defining it and in terms of the content of the courses as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, Derek, because I agree with you as far as the technology is key. But I also think the technique is key. And I think in today's day and age, from a digital media standpoint, there are certain, hardware, software that, is price comes down and you can teach the technique. And that can go a really long way for programs that are really strapped to be able to get some of those things. So I just think that's something we should keep in mind too. Even though it's hard to substitute a large studio to recreate that kind of environment, but it doesn't mean there aren't ways for video production class to work without it, yeah.
And I really think, and I started in the radio industry back in the dark ages of the middle 1980s, okay? We were still using razor blades and grease pencils. And as things went on, and yes, I learned how to use, Audition and everything else that you can think of. Basics of editing, good writing, and technology is going to continue to change. And what we're going to do here today arguably could be outdated, a couple months or 2 years from now. Right. And I think somehow we need to put together the principles that say these are the classes that will teach our students, irrespective of what we have, what programs we're using. I mean, various editions of Audition and Premiere and everything else, they change from year to year anyway. So what we need to do really, I think, is teach them how to understand the processes. Good writing is good writing, good editing is good editing, and the technology is going to change almost by definition. So I think what we really need to grapple with, and even in the whole issue of convergence, I mean, again, back in the dark ages, we had radio, TV, newspaper. Who had even heard of the internet? And now all of a sudden, all those old barriers are falling down, and we have to teach our students as much as possible to do it all. Again, with the limited amount of time and space and resources, we've still got to be able to best equip them, I think, to be well-rounded, to be able to understand the various components, and whether they're working with production or they find themselves all of a sudden working for a newspaper that has a live stream, it all comes together. And I think perhaps it is a ridiculously broad goal, but as much as possible, I think all communications industries and educators really need to deal with that and grapple with it, because that's the situation we've got out there right now.
That's what our college did. We visited our feeder university because we were getting a new studio. In fact, it just completed. We're going to get to use it for the first time this fall, so we're very excited. But we were given a blank paper and said, design your studio.
Nice.
So we said, oh no, where do we begin? So we began by going to UTRGV and saying, okay, well, most of our students are transferring here, so what does their studio look like? And we spoke with the instructors, we spoke with the chair, and we got an idea of those skills, those specific skills, technologies that they were utilizing there. We also went to Kingsville, Texas A&M Kingsville, and looked at their studio, and then used those campuses as inspiration for our own. And so, we have the computer lab, we have our green screen space. We're very specific with certain lights and what they were doing with their lighting, and getting a sound booth to practice those types of skills. But we had to go to the universities to see what's being done there. And so that collaboration really helped us in determining the technology and the skill set we were trying to build with our students.
For sure, and I really think along those same lines, collaboration with other institutions, collaboration with the media in whatever market you're dealing with. What are they needing? What are they using? What are they looking for?
So to Andrea and Andrew's points about the expectations of the 4 years, of what the 2 years know when they come in, from a 2-year, speaking to the representatives of the 4 years, what do you expect a student to know for radio and television if they were to transfer from a 2-year? I think that's probably a good place to start.
I think it is. I mean, and I also think, again, just going back to this and maybe keeping that in mind, keeping in mind what Eric is saying, and that content is king. That, irrespective of the equipment that you're using, there are certain skills that are universal, and I think first and foremost is the ability to be able to write, to write clearly and succinctly for increasingly a variety of audiences, whether it's for a radio audience, whether it's for TV, or whether it's for the web, and whoever's watching, streaming. But I mean, I think that's kind of one of the core requirements. And so I'm thinking if we could look through this and maybe either eliminate those courses that we think are definitely not necessary, or pick one or two or a few that we think are absolutely essential, and maybe go from there. I'm not sure which is the most effective way of doing it. The worksheet, the worksheet.
Maybe we could, using the framework that we're talking about here, I think, which is focusing on creative media production, technique, and skills classes, and studies classes. Things that relate to those things for radio and television. Maybe try to identify what we see as definitely yeses. And just discuss what do we see 10 or 12, or just start talking about it and go down the list.
Todd? I agree, because I think that's in the students that I know we've had transfer in from a 2-year. And Nancy, I know we've got this partnership brand new with MCC, and one of the things that MCC doesn't have a RTV type program, but the fact of the matter is we want students that are coming from these different fields. I think we've got a real opportunity. But I agree, I think we need basic overview knowledge of the industry, writing, some sort of basic overview knowledge of visual components, and then maybe audio components, and visual broadly defined. I don't know what that looks like. I think
Right.
there are courses here that I agree. I think it's a good plan to.
Another thing to keep in mind, too, is some of these classes, like Alan was saying, we could look to plug into the core and overlap those into certain areas in the creative arts or language, philosophy, culture, et cetera. So
I think from that perspective, certainly 1307, I mean, we have that as part of our core currently. And I jokingly call it my gateway drug, but it's a great way to overview, and it kind of leads very logically and naturally into 1335, which I would also advocate for at least consideration of including.
I would agree. I mean, from my perspective, if it was just radio and TV, I'd focus more on 1335, just because.
Has everyone had a chance to go through all these yet, or do we need to give everybody a minute?
Do you want to take a
minute to go through
just look through some stuff? Or you guys all
Is
right?
everyone good? Okay.
Also, as you go through the discussion, let me just call your attention to the thing I put up on the board, and I know it's hard to read. I can blow it up if you like. I hope I printed out for you. I know it's crazy to read. If you have bionic eyes, maybe you can see it. But I can blow it up if you have particular courses you want to see. But this is the list of what courses are taught where and what their enrollments are. This is really useful for us to see if a course is popular, has high enrollments, is widely offered at colleges, and widely offered at universities. We assume, although we can't know for sure, that just because a course is offered at a university that it necessarily applies or is required for a degree. But just for example, to take one course, what was it, 1330?
1307 to 1335.
1335, right? It's has enrollments in colleges. It looks like 646 students. It's offered at, what does it say, 13 colleges?
Yeah.
Which is kind of a medium number, low to medium number. And it's offered at 5 universities, which is sort of so-so. But if you look at the communications courses, they're not really widely offered across universities across the board. The big exception is Introduction to Mass Communications,
Right.
which is offered at 23 universities. That's pretty much everybody. I think that is everybody. And it's offered at 42 colleges, which is a very high number. But just as a point of reference, just keep this in mind. If a course is rarely offered and rarely accepted and has low enrollments, then it might bear some serious discussion before we put that in the FOS, or maybe it needs to be tinkered with or combined with or something. But that being said, let me remind you again, our mission is what students need to know. And if we decide that a course needs to be in the FOS, you can watch the enrollments and the number of institutions that offer it go up once it's part of the field of study. So these things will sort themselves out.
So back to your point, Erica. So you were talking about 1307, and so you have students at your school take 1307 first and then 1335?
Typically, it's not a requirement. 1307 is part of our core curriculum. And then the way we're structured right now on the broadcast section, for example, there are 4 classes that we require. 2300, 1335, 2311, and 2315. And again, that's broadcast journalism.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's one of our 2 tracks. We don't offer specifically radio TV, but we teach a lot of the production courses as part of our broadcast sequence. We've kind of grouped our classes in one of those 2 tracks, and that's how we've proceeded. And I think it's enabled us to offer the most options to our students, because we are by no means the largest department on our campus. And because, as we looked at it, there are 2 sets of skills for journalists. Either you kind of channel yourself in a more traditional print, maybe some overlap with online and more traditional newspaper, magazine kind of formats, and then on the broadcast side. And the way we approach it is you don't just write, you don't just shoot, you don't just edit, but you do it together in the context of producing news content. And so we ask our students to take several skills courses over the course of their working on their field of study. And from a job preparedness standpoint, it enables them to collect and put together something of a portfolio or a reel, learn how to do it, and either transfer very successfully to four-year schools. And we've gotten very good feedback. I've had students come back to me and say, they said to me, how do you know how to do this? And, we studied at Richland College. And I said, yay, team. But, by the same token, the more of those hands-on experiences we can give them, the stronger we're making our students, whether or not they decide to transfer, which many of our students do, not all. And
What part of the core is the mass comm class in?
oh, goodness, I knew you were going to ask me that. Can I consult my notes?
No worries.
Pardon me? No?
I mean, if you don't know, I mean.
I want to say 09, but that doesn't sound right as I say it.
We can look and we can take a break.
And yeah, but one isn't a prerequisite to the other in our setup. I normally pitch it that way, and 1307, I think, enables some of our students coming in that maybe aren't sure what they want to do when they grow up, kind of thing, and they see the industry, they develop an interest, and they say, okay, well, maybe. I've had students who have become broadcast majors because of 1307 and what we've been able to talk to them about, and then they kind of delve a little deeper into 1335.
And that's where I see the difference is 1307 is much more the broad,
Correct.
All
Correct.
different aspects of mass communication, and then we would have intro to broadcast, which I could see being similar to intro to electronic media, where it's just much more specific.
As a matter
about
of
the
fact, I think
theory,
that's what
the law, the things like that are specific to broadcast. So
I think that's what we used to call it, wasn't it? It's Survey of Broadcasting, I
It used to be
think.
Survey of Radio Television,
Yeah.
I think is what it was.
Right.
Or Radio TV, right.
And yeah, we kind of, I guess, I kind of shorthanded it. But yeah, and I guess I would argue, again, almost irrespective of ultimate career goal, 1307 is admittedly much more broad. But it's a great opportunity for all of our students. I'd like to see every student on our campus understand media overall. And 1307 is kind of how I've addressed that. And then if you have an interest, okay, go over to 1335.
So what do people think of that idea in general, having mass comm part of the core, and then having intro to RTF be the first class that is the intro class to intro to radio television?
Accompanied with a writing course, I would say absolutely.
yeah,
Well, I mean,
we'll
we're just
get
kind of
to
taking baby
this,
steps
yeah.
here.
Yeah, I was going to
sure.
say.
I mean, I agree with you.
I wish I had Erica at WTC. It would have shortened my 3-year battle to get 1307 into the core, which I finally got accomplished last year. And when I teach that, I fold media literacy into how I teach it. I wish I could add that in as a student learning objective, to be honest with you, but that may be beyond our scope. But COM 1307 encompasses a lot, and it can be very easily, you can have a media literacy component. Now, and the media writing, definitely. Now, the writing for radio, I also teach COM 2339, and there's a million different ways you can go there. You mentioned, Christian, an intro to, help me, let me find that, which
Can we
course
just
was
keep?
that?
Can we just look at the first two?
Keep going down the list?
Yeah, look
Sure.
at 1307 and
Yeah.
1335, and maybe can we come to an agreement that with what you said?
Right, I mean,
Do we
you-
need to make a motion. or do
Yeah,
we-
does anyone have a motion about that?
I mean, what I would really like to see is us to divide it into categories, like you mentioned, like we will have survey courses, writing courses, design courses, video courses, audio courses. If we can get, some areas like that. And then what I would like to really see is several ORs in there where, again, for survey, you can take any of these 4 courses,
Are we able to do that, Alan? Able to say, for this class, it could be media writing or writing for radio, television, film?
Yes,
As a
technically,
field study.
but I kind of discourage it because a course, either needs to be in the field of study or it's not. And institutions are required to indicate which courses on the transcripts are field of study courses.
Okay.
And it makes it harder for them if there are choices. But that being said, it has been done in the past and can be done if you really feel like courses are exactly equivalent and you really don't care which ones students take. And that's usually not often the case, that you really don't care which one. You really do care which one they take. For example, English literature was here not long ago, and they had a choice that they set up where students they had to take some literature historical survey courses, and they said choose 2 courses from American literature, British literature survey, or world lit survey. Because they didn't care. I mean, as long as they took a literature survey, that student choice determined if they wanted American lit, British lit, or world lit. That's a good example of when you could set up a choice. Or sometimes there are courses that are very equivalent. You know, there are some speech courses that are essentially 2 courses that are essentially the same course. They just have different titles and a different designation to them. Or a statistics course. You can have statistics for social sciences, statistics for business, statistics for math. If you don't really care, so long as they have a statistics, you can set it up that way. So if you feel strongly about it, you can set up a choice that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't we keep going down the list for classes? How about
1307 and 1335.
and keep that and keep a pin in that as 2 things that we really like. Those 2 things. Okay. So what's the next class that anyone has put as a definitely yes after Com 1335?
I've been hearing media writing a lot.
2303. 2303.
2303.
Anything before that? Okay. I have one before that. So
I have video production.
I have video production. I know we talked about it a little bit. You want to talk about it, Derek, or what do you?
Well, again, thinking about how I saw these different categories, I think about this radio and television as being for people who want to become media producers of some sort. And so this is the visual kind of production element that I think would be an important kind of fundamental piece, with the caveat that the course description does seem to describe studio production, and I would think that would need to be reworked. But otherwise, I think if you're radio, television focused, a video production course is like an important piece.
I did want to comment that there's a rubric that we use that did not get pulled. My couple of courses I do in video are ARTV. So, you know, we do digital video, ARTV 1351.
Yes.
And right now I'm teaching After Effects in 2D animation.
1451 or 1351?
1351.
It is, okay. ARTV.
And I'm using ARTV 2301, which is 2D animation, to teach After Effects. So.
And I think that's, and I don't know how, you know, I don't know how y'all have it set up. I know we have greatly expanded our video, quote unquote, production offerings, and we will have students that are man, just fantastic, and they don't need our video production class. Our video production class is a 3000 level. And so when we credit those in, you know, we have to make sure that, you know, we're getting there 40 hours of the junior, senior credits and all that. But it's interesting, you're teaching that class when we don't have a specific class that would match that, but we would definitely sub it in as a elective credit, I guess. So anyway, I think my question is, you know, what about even pull it back before we can get to video, the basic image, and so a photography type class. In other words, but before you get to video, you got to think about the shot, and you got to think about is that the important part of video production? I know all of it is, but are we missing that stage where we need a photography type?
You know, I think it's interesting, and you know, we have we use that After Effects class number in a completely like different department in our college. That's like gaming and such. So it's, you know, it's kind of, you know, all over the place. And we have a photography department, and there are many photography departments that overlaps with too. So I totally hear what you're saying and agree with it. I think some of that has to be covered in a quality video production class, beginning with the image, without taking the steam out of a full-on photography class. If that makes sense.
I agree with what you're saying, though, Todd. I was having that discussion with a colleague, and I said it would be great, and we don't have room in our curriculum, but I said it would be great if our broadcast majors had to take a photography course, just in basic composition of framing and lighting and things that we do in video, but I think they would be even better, and particularly in a day and age where our reporters have been asked to become multimedia journalists, and they've been asked to shoot video as well as report stories. Yep. And the majority of them are not as prepared as they could be because we do not. And so if they were able or asked to, now on the flip side, again, if we put this in the field of study and the transfer students come in having that, but our native students don't, then we've got that sort of imbalance that I think Ellen was talking about as well.
Yeah, that to me, if adding I love the idea of adding the photography class, but to me it feels like a pretty specific specialization. I mean, for example, we have a visual mixed media associates of applied science, which with the photography department we split classes across the board, and so for there, to me, it fits that specialization. But maybe it feels too broad. Personally, for me, for this.
If you're trying to teach a composition I, Design 1 does that. Like, it literally goes through multimedia, 2D, and teaches composition, it teaches color, it teaches lines, it teaches the basic eye of an appealing image broadly, and it's offered widely.
That's 1311.
That's 1311. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is important to consider also is the notion of accreditation. We are nationally accredited. We have certain standards to meet to maintain that accreditation, and I worry about some of these courses being way too specialized because you're limited in the number of course-specific or field of study-specific type courses that you can offer to maintain accreditation. So for us, almost all of the courses that we offer are done at the 3000 level or up. The equivalent of 1307, we have that. The equivalent of the basic writing for media course, we have that at the 1000 level. But anything else, if you were to bring in a video production class from a 2-year school, that would probably transfer fine and take the place of the 3000 level video production class that we offer. But we probably wouldn't transfer a radio TV news course, the TV news course, because that's our capstone course. That's the key course in our electronic media major. So, I worry too much about getting into courses that are too specialized.
Well, if there's accreditation issues, that's something we really need to address and look at, because we certainly don't want to get anything that's going to threaten anybody's accreditation. And I don't know if accreditors specify what sort of courses must be taken at the upper division level for accreditation. But if any of you here are familiar with those accreditation rules, or we can look it up while our meeting's going on, because we want to be clear to not stand in contradiction to that. So that's an excellent point. Thanks.
Okay, well, maybe we should keep going through the list. So we talked about Design 1 a little bit, Video Production 1,
So that's where I was throwing in there. Because Video Production 1 does describe using studio equipment,
Sure.
Maybe that with an or to something like ARTV 1351 that's not studio production, so a broader group of schools could put a video production course in there.
Okay, let's note that.
I'm going to piggyback on that, Nancy. At UTRGV, their COM 1336, instead of it being labeled video production 1, it is television production.
Which is, I think, 2 years old from the catalog. Yeah, so I think that's probably why.
That's probably okay.
And so, and its description is still, like we were saying, pretty broadcast focused, I think. So,
Would there be any thought about, would there be any thought about changing the title of Video Production 1 to Studio Production again to more accurately reflect the content of the course? And I mean, is that something within our purview, Ellen, and something that we could do? Because it just seems to me video production is, again, it's very broad. It goes back to your point there. And I don't see that it really accurately reflects the content as listed here, which is all studio. It doesn't include editing, doesn't include field. It's just all studio.
Is that fixed though, or can we update that? Because that's actually what I was thinking when I say video production. Is that to me, video production is what was being described in that photography area. It's learning how to compose shots. It's learning lighting. It's learning how to take a camera out in the field. And so I don't think a TV studio production course should be a lower division requirement. I think that's maybe asking too much of what this is designed to do. But if it means taking the cameras that you have, whether it's a mobile phone camera or whatever video cameras your department has available, and learning how to shoot video and put it together and edit and things like that, then that would be, to me, something that fits into this FOS plan.
yeah.
And so, go ahead.
Well, I would agree.
Go ahead, Erica.
I mean, in terms of the way we teach video production, yes, we teach in studio. We have our students come in and do newscasts and interviews and all other things like that, and somebody is manning the control and the whole 9 yards. But we also teach them how to take either their smartphones or their flip cams or the other cameras out into the field. So if we are, I would absolutely, Derek, agree with you that if we can extend that description to, and again, I'm not sure if we have the authority to do that, but I would very much like to see that course description expanded to see overall shot composition production as well as studio production as available.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I think that wouldn't necessarily diminish the programs that have studios and the ability to do more. And speaking, I know UT Austin's not here, but I know they have in the first tiers of their program a basic, what's called the introduction to image and sound, which is, sort of what you described, Derek, to my understanding of it, a basic, video production, digital storytelling class. And I think it speaks to that. A lot of different classes could speak to that kind of class. And if you're a radio TV major, from my perspective, you should, in the first 2 years, get your hands on a camera and make something.
The way that I see it, though, with this, we've got really two choices. One, we can change the title of the name from video production to maybe studio production, or two, we can amend the content as well, and then again, maybe we would still need to change the name.
Right, and
I think we've kind of got two options.
I think video production applies to a lot of things, but I think the name or the description is definitely broadcast. If we can change the description, that makes sense to me.
Well, and I think I'm not seeing any other. I mean, I know we have to teach what is required, but I just feel very fundamentally that if we're not giving them the equipment, if we're not teaching them how to shoot in the field, there's no point in teaching them how to work in the studio, because video has to come from someplace, and especially, and again, I'm speaking from a journalism perspective here, you get that from the field.
Do we have other thoughts on the matter? Maybe.
I was just going to say,
yeah.
At our school, we have a TV field production, and every school I've been at has community college level has audio recording. They always have that as one of the classes, and that covers the very same thing that you're saying. And it varies widely depending on the technology and what year and what you're doing. But a lot of those people now, they end up at churches and places and being their main video people, even though their major was audio, just because they had the discipline of the audio, and then they implemented it, because the technologies keep changing. So.
Okay, so maybe we should go on to, so does anyone, video production too? Anyone think that's the next class? Anyone think that should be in there? Okay.
Too specific.
What about media literacy?
1,000 times yes.
I could see that, though, like you talked about in 1307 as opposed to, but, I mean, I wouldn't.
Right, and not everybody that teaches 1307, that it's not like they don't necessarily teach it that way. I mean, that's just what I do, because we don't offer 2300, but there's nothing wrong with putting it in there, because some of you obviously have the resources. You can offer both, and that's fine.
Oh, wait, are we talking about media literacy or TV? Yeah, okay.
Media literacy, I mean, it's like, it's like Alan said, student takes, if they're at your school, they take what they can, and if they want to take media literacy, but we don't offer it, and they get to, and they get to West Texas A&M, then they can pick that up there.
Well, and Garen, I would absolutely agree with you. I try as much as possible, too, in my 1307 classes to bring in issues of media literacy, because I think it builds upon one another, and the basic core information. Personally, I'd like to require that everybody take both of those classes. I understand that isn't always possible, but I guess the way I end up teaching it, and I always have a problem getting everything into 1307 anyway. Really, in terms of, we've got such a wealth of information out there, and if you're going to take the time to, kind of step in and have your students talk about what's going on out there, which to me is a huge value in 1307, I'm always behind. I try. 2300 is more, to me, about, okay, here's the industry. Got that in 1307. 2300 is how do I, as an individual, or what does it matter that students are, spending 27 hours a day playing video games and those sorts of things? So it kind of
literally, there's a recent report, I read a Nielsen report that said the average American adult spends approximately 10 hours engaging with media a day.
Yes.
And that's a staggering statistic, and I think it speaks to the critical nature of media literacy, to be able to analyze, evaluate, and create media thoughtfully. And I think that's, personally for me, that's as important as English composition in today's day and age in any degree that we have. And if we can't get in the regular, I think 18 credits, I would propose we try to get in as a core class somewhere, because it could fit. I think some school, does any school here have it in the core?
We do at Tech.
Under what area?
It can fit in as a credit for the state core. I forgot which area.
Right. I think some schools have it maybe as a
language, philosophy, culture.
Yeah, I think some schools have it that way.
I have it under
Do you?
creative arts, actually.
Creative arts?
Yeah.
I would say that media literacy is much more of a broader communication field of study rather than a radio TV. I think it's important. I agree, but to me, it's less specific to radio TV.
Agreed.
More general.
I agree. That's where I was kind of struggling with it. Not that I don't think it's important, but I could see it based on what we saw with communication as something that would be more appropriate there, because it would include a lot of the other areas as opposed to just radio and TV.
I would have a question or concern with that label. If media literacy is about teaching our students the validity and value of a truthiness society, right? Like telling what is good and bad, true and false. And the media that we see most under attack contemporarily, and even for the last 10 years, not even getting political necessarily, is television and radio. I think that it would be a unique skill set for those students coming out of that degree plan, being able to defend what they do as legitimate.
I think not only defending what they do, but that the media literacy component, I think, is really valuable to people who are going to be the producers of media, and that it's an understanding of the social and cultural implications of what you're doing. And if you don't have that, if you don't have a focused understanding of it, I think what you produce looks different than somebody who really has thought a lot about the power of what I'm doing and the influence of what I'm doing and what it does, and the relationship that audiences have with this stuff. And so I actually think it needs to be a part of people's education who are going to be the producers of media.
Totally agree. But
Like I said, you don't think it should be?
I do think it should be,
okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
But is it, again, so Alan, so can a class be in 5 different field of study programs? Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's, I mean, to me, that's why it makes sense maybe that it's in the core under some area and not necessarily in the required radio television classes.
Can this be correct on the screen there, that media literacy is offered at no university?
That's not correct.
We don't, I know we don't, but
We
USF
offer
Tech
it.
does.
But again, my question is, it's related to the name. Are you picking it up? How are you picking it up?
Exactly. How many universities offer some variety of it?
We incorporate media literacy into the Intro to Mass Comm course.
Right, same with our intro classes. I mean, we have an intro class for each of our sequences, journalism, advertising, PR, broadcast, and it would be a component as opposed to
And
a
of course,
specific
this
class.
doesn't reflect any upper division level classes. These are just courses that are in the ACG.
Right.
Yeah.
2,300. Okay, well, let's come back to that too. That's a
Back to
good
that.
discussion. All right, so what's the next class anyone has? Probably, I would guess, 2303,
Audio production.
audio production. So let's talk about that.
Right. I mean, he mentioned, Derek was talking about, like with technology and things of that nature, and then Erica had talked about that. If you have Adobe Audition and a laptop and a built-in microphone, I can show you how to do editing and recording and produce a radio spot. So, and I do remember the days when we used reel-to-reel tape and cut it and spliced. Maybe a couple of you around here might remember that too, but not very many of you. But
I remember that.
yeah, and yeah, I mean, to me, for radio television production, you have to understand, and these are basic techniques that apply to everything. Even if you went in to engineer a music, an album, there's basic editing techniques, recording and editing, multi-track editing, and that's what this teaches. So,
Whenever I'm teaching audio production, especially if I teach in filmmaking also, and I have sort of an uphill battle because the people all come in with visual skills and have an idea that audio is just sort of there, and they usually appreciate it when it's not there, and like most. But I emphasize critical listening skills, and I give them a thing the very first week where they have to go home and listen to TV broadcasts and stuff and make some notes, and they come back with a whole world of stuff they never noticed before. And that's the beginning of critical listening. But
Right.
But I always tell them, look, you may never want to be an engineer, but you got to get good at this, or else you're never going to hire good people. You're not going to know the difference, and that's the big selling point of that. But I put it as a probably yes in my category.
Any other thoughts on audio production as importance or criticalness to a radio TV program?
Well, I think just a couple words in support of that. I mean, audio is, can you really have video without audio? I mean, so I think radio, TV, you have to be conscious of the storytelling technique. And I'll even go so far as to say to my students when they're going out producing their first news packages, walk into a room, close your eyes, what do you hear? Imagine yourself walking down the midway at the state fair. You can close your eyes and just kind of put yourself there. So audio storytelling, whether it be documentary, news, creative, it has to be a part of it and an understanding of it.
I was going to say one other thing, not to be a salesman about this, but when audio production is bad, or when the video is bad, people will say that's the treatment that they wanted. When audio production is bad, it's just bad. They don't.
And you know it really easily.
They wanted it that way.
Very
They
true.
never said that.
Yeah.
Very true.
I agree 100% that audio production is a critical part of a 2-year program from my perspective.
What other classes then? Editing layout, I assume not, because that speaks to more print journalism. Media writing, I have, and that's a class that we take, that we have. And the way that it's at least the way that we've taught it, is when we have two classes, we have a broadcast writing class and a media writing class. The media writing class focuses much more on AP style and so the broad, which, a few years back, I was kind of not so much in favor of it. I was like, students used to complain about AP style, and I would sort of be a little sympathetic. But now, I mean, that's the style that's used on the web. That's the style. So if you're writing for multiple platforms, you've got to have that class as well.
At
So-
least a good working understanding of it.
Understanding.
I can tell you, and I tell my students, that in every situation, public relations, advertising, or in the newsroom, there has always been an AP style book on multiple desks, so an awareness of it. And I guess just a quick comment, we tend to teach media writing a little bit more broadly. Yes, we talk about AP style, we talk about basic news story, but it's also a time you can talk about writing for the web and writing for public relations and writing more for those sorts of applications as well. So we spread it out just a little bit more.
That makes sense. Maybe we should talk about media writing and writing for radio, TV, film together, because obviously those classes have a lot in common and a lot in depending on how you teach it. How do people see writing for radio, TV as far as its necessity for a two-year program?
I think just one more thing too. I was just wondering whether we also need to consider again whether we need to change the description or the content even of media writing. I mean, given is it broad enough to include the web and technology, or is that something that we need to add a little bit more just to be maybe a little more specific, or even a little broader so that it encompasses multiple platforms?
Well, media writing, wasn't the original name. Before it was media writing, it was news writing.
And there's still a news writing.
Well, there's news
reporting. It got turned
News
into.
report.
which they delineated that. Because used to it was news gathering. News gathering used to be.
News gathering and writing 1 and 2, wasn't it?
That's exactly what it was.
2315.
2311 and 2315, and they've separated that out now. But the media writing. It gives you the latitude. You can teach it, however you want, but you can certainly include every kind of thing on that. The writing, he mentioned the writing for radio, television, and film. What we did, or what we do, or what I do at WTC, is I take the COM 2339 and I sort of have them use that to write and develop and produce a longer length feature. I don't want to use the word documentary. You could say mini documentary. So like, for example, when they dedicated the statue of Quanah Parker on the campus, the student who won first place in TIPA with that this last spring for me and wrote into that feature, she had to go around with the recorder, get all of the interviews. This is all audio, no video. All audio, and then had to take all of that and then write a script and write transitions and segues and come out. And I said, and we don't need this to be too long, so your challenge is to get this done in 5 minutes. And turned out a fabulous piece. But again, you could, if we had a television studio, I could do more, but oh well. They'll have to wait till they get to the four-year schools to get their handle on that.
At South Texas College, I teach the writing for TV, film, and radio class as well, and there's a large emphasis on the script component. So for TV, we look at script writing for television. So they create a commercial, and then they attempt to film the commercial and editing. So there's a little bit of that involved. For radio, they create a public service announcement, but we pair up directly with the radio station, and so there's a field trip attached to that assignment. So there's that audio production element. Because we don't have the technology just yet, we visit the station at our communications, and we see the process that goes into actually creating a public service announcement, and how does it equal or perhaps not equal to the scripts, the scripts that they've created. And it's a big learning lesson for them. And then for the film aspect, they do write a 5-minute short film script. So there's a large emphasis on that. And what I'm looking at here to see, okay, well, how does this connect to the media writing class, is I'm looking at the learning outcomes. And our learning outcomes for the writing for radio, television, and film class are a bit different, right? They're worded a bit differently than what's here on the ACGM So I just thought I'd note that, and if perhaps we could.
Right. I mean, when you look at the outcomes, they look like very different classes. Yeah, I mean, I teach the writing class too, disclaimer. So, and I think similarly, as far as focusing on scripts for TV, film, and like cross-media, transmedia kinds of storytelling, it's a very different class than the media writing. And I think it comes down to which of those classes make the most sense. Do both of them make sense to have in, if we're really talking about, I think some of the feedback we've already been getting is a big focus on writing is valuable, right, from a critical analysis standpoint and so forth. Something to think about.
I teach the media writing for Blinn.
Oh, great.
And I do the PSA, and I've partnered with A&M's Public Radio, and they vote on the best PSA in my class, and it gets made, and they air it. And
Love
so even in the general media writing class, I can kind of do the same stuff, right? It's really nice and broad, so we get that opportunity, and they write a commercial for television, and so they get the script opportunities, and they get it in the context of how it's unique against traditional writing and social media platform writing.
I mean, the media writing class, the learning outcomes are so broad, some of them. It says modify writing styles to fit various media platforms. I mean, that could be almost anything.
Right.
I mean, you could talk about writing a screenplay for a feature film versus writing social media content, practically. So it's interesting.
That's where being able to see the syllabus or understand exactly what was in that class, I think, is so crucial, particularly for a four-year college. Because, I mean, if it was just much more focused just on film, then it's probably not something that is as important to us as something that where, again, you're talking about radio and you're going visiting the radio stations, doing all of that kind of thing, and even you're writing the PSAs or commercials. So, yeah.
I think the nice thing about the writing for radio, TV, film class is it usually speaks to TV writing on some level, and many four-year programs, at least ones that we partner with, almost all of them have a script writing, screenwriting class that there's potential equivalency to. So something to think about.
Any other classes that you looked at and said definitely yes? Because as I looked through a lot of them, there's a lot more getting outside of the radio and TV area, but I'm certainly open if there's any other.
Does anyone use the Practicum in electronic media class? I'm just curious.
Yes, we do.
I'm just really curious.
Yeah, we do. We use that primarily. We give our students 2324 and 2389 as internship and externship opportunities, depending on what they need it to be. So it's a hands-on practicum, and it just depends on, we offer typically both of those classes with that option. And I know elsewhere in our college, it's also used as kind of a introduction to Photoshop, for example, over on the photography side. So, it's a little bit different application. But the way we use 2324 and 2389 is typically internships.
How many classes do they have to take before they get to that?
The way we offer 2324 and 2389, it is, we have those four classes that everybody takes, 1335, 2300, 2311, and 2315, and then they have one elective credit, and that both of those classes are in that mass. Choose one. And if they want to take another one, if they've got the time or the resources, they're not prevented from taking another one.
We also offer the COM 2389 course, and they take 6 communication classes before that one.
You take 6, you said?
Yes, so the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 core classes.
So you said 6 core, not RTF class or radio TV classes? 6 radio.
Major specific classes.
Major, okay,
yes.
gotcha, okay.
COM 2331, I don't think I've heard anybody mention that. Radio, television announcing, that's a really key course for me. I don't have a television studio, so obviously the emphasis is radio announcing, but it's in various various types, on-air show hosting, sports play-by-play. I teach that in that class. So
What do people feel about that as a potential inclusion?
How widely is that offered? I had really kind of never heard of it prior to reading it on the list.
what, COM 2331?
The radio and television announcing, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear your question.
How widely is that offered? I had never heard of it being offered.
I have to
until
look.
today.
It was one of the courses that I kept when we didn't have the CTE program anymore, because to me, if you're thinking about announcing, especially on air, if you're going to be on air, either in front of the camera or on the mic or both, to me it was like it was a have to, because that's where I teach all of those skill sets. But maybe it's too specific for.
Well, we teach a section of it every semester for probably a decade, and we incorporate a big podcasting element into it too, and it makes it even more relevant and for students. So.
Does anyone offer like voice and diction anymore?
I was going to say, we have a voice and diction class, but that's more in the comm studies area, though we have a broadcast announcing class, but we also can substitute that for business and professional communication. So for those that maybe want to go more into management or that kind of thing, then I think business and professional is, so, we offer.
Is it a core class then? Is it a core class if you can substitute it for?
It's one of our major courses.
Major courses, okay, gotcha.
This is a good time to maybe take a break, just a few minute breaks, stretch your legs.
Who wants a break?
Use the restroom, and then we can come back, and we've got a lot to think about. Maybe we can come back and narrow this down even more, or see what we are.
We'll be meeting for calisthenics in the hallway if anyone wants to.
Okay, for those in the booth, we'll stand adjourned until 2:35.
That sounds
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Are there any other courses, apart from those that we've discussed, that you felt would be a definitely yes? And so we sort of ended up with COM 2339, but any of the others, or are we pretty good with the classes that we've kind of set aside, if you will, as being core classes?
The only class that I would inquire, and I'm not even sure it belongs, I put it in my probably yes, just because I thought it would be worth talking about, is discussing or addressing more specifically more form of advertising. I realize that a lot of programs have public relations, but advertising is a huge part of radio and television, and having some sort of basic understanding, even if it's the intro to advertising or something, could be helpful.
For us, I'd see that as part of the intro to mass comm, which we don't have. But I mean, we have an advertising sequence, and we have an intro to advertising, class. So it wouldn't be as relevant. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
if
for us,
anybody else-
it's the same. I mean, it's a different cycle of classes. That's not part of radio, TV. Not that it couldn't be, but that's just for us too.
And Catherine, I think I absolutely agree with you in terms of the value of radio television students understanding advertising, because it can end up being a huge part of what they do. The only challenge I see with our limited number of credit hours that we've really gotten, I mean, that's a frustration I have 24/7. I'd like to be able to, I want every student that comes out of my program to do an internship. I can't require it. I'd love them to take this. I'd love them to take that. I really strongly believe that the more well-rounded we can make our students, the better they're going to be, the more employable they're going to be. And I've still only got these 60 hours to work with in the course of 2 years. And you know.
Right? No, that's fine.
I'm going to make a presumption here, but I'd like to just get a tiny bit of feedback, of course, in trying to get them to take this field of study. Well, Mr. Skates, this really sounds neat and fun, and I would like to take it, but I'm already 2 semesters behind because I had to go into fast track college algebra, and you know where I'm going, right, everybody? So you want them to do it in a 2-year time period. One of the questions on here is, can this be done, the 18 hours, and painfully, from my own personal experience, from what I see, it's almost, you almost need to tell students if they have to go into the developmental, math or the reading and writing, plan on being here 3 years to really get the full associates, and sometimes that doesn't work out. But I agree. I know what Eric is saying. It's like the radio television announcing thing, COM 2331. I admitted to Catherine and Andrea, I said, I guess I'm probably being kind of myopic there because my brain was on radio, but, announcing, maybe there's not room. There's just not room.
One thought about the radio TV announcing class. I've thought before of trying to put that class into the core as a speech communications class, because if taught right, if taught a certain way, anyways, it speaks to a lot of those same issues and is in many ways more timely and value and relevant to students from a standpoint because of the kinds of things they can produce that are media driven, which students connect with or can.
Correct.
So just food for thought.
Food for thought for me for another battle.
Well, I think I'd marked 10 different courses. I don't know if anybody else.
Actually, are we done? Did we talk about introduction to cinema? Did anyone have thoughts about that?
Not with the broadcast, at least not for me.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it and I didn't know if it was an integral part of, but I thought it'd be more like, hey, if you got room and you came here with some college credit, take some time to take this just to broaden your experience, but not in the field of study.
Makes sense. Anything else on the back?
So you've got, Andrew, you said you had 10 courses.
I had 10.
Can you go over those again for me? I'm following
The ones
along.
that, at least that I heard, that there was at least a little bit of discussion of people raised was ARTS 1311, COM 1307, COM 1335, COM 1336, COM 2300, COM 2303, COM 2311, COM 2331, and COM 2339. Does anyone else have any other courses?
I had originally put down 2302 from an ethics standpoint, and that again may be too broad for the radio television field of study. Typically, we teach 2302 as effectively our capstone. You know, once you've got all this experience and background, now let's talk about the ethics of the industry and how you make it all work together.
What was that? Which COM
2302, Principles of Journalism. Principles of Journalism.
My problem with that is just the title. It's
Sure,
just
no,
journalism,
totally.
and I see that as it, but I mean, I'm open
Totally
to it
gotcha.
too, but I saw that as sort
Well,
of
and
journalism field
yeah,
of
and
studies.
that's really our focus.
But I
so.
understand what you're,
Sure.
I do
Well, if
understand what you're saying.
Maybe if they're going to meet, since they're going to meet for journalism, right, or was it broadcast journalism they're meeting? That's the other separate meeting.
It was journalism.
It was journalism. Maybe that would be a perfect tie-in for
And
that.
I would also say that a lot of the portions of that class I would teach in both the Mass Comm 1307 and the media writing.
Sure.
Cover a good bit of those. So if those two got in, then I would say that ethics are covered in both of those.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess we're blessed with the luxury of being able to offer them. I think it's important. Anyway, for what that's worth. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with the first class, let's review all the classes, right? So the first one was ARTS 1311, Design 1.
I just have a question on that. Two-dimensional versus three-dimensional in 1311 and 1312. Would 3D tie in more on the TV side? Okay.
I would argue no. The three-dimensional is really more sculpting and stage design maybe. But I would say the two-dimensional because that's where they learn lines, composition, that kind of thing.
And I guess I married a graphic artist, and so he thinks everything in 3D, so maybe that's where I'm seeing the difference, and I haven't taught that class. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any discussion on that class? Does anyone offer that class? So, one.
Glenn offers it. I don't teach it, but I did audit the course just personally to get a little bit wider breadth of knowledge. I was impressed with the ability of that course to apply to a broad range of disciplines. And if we had mentioned earlier, specifically Todd had mentioned that to identify skill sets that we want or expect students to have by the time they reach the upper division classes. And Raymond had mentioned that a lot of times when we start getting into these specific radio and television classes, that starts to encroach on some of the upper level courses. I like the Design 1 as being a class that is offered widely at both the 2-year and 4-year level, and is something that teaches the skills of developing an eye for composition that a lot of the 4-year schools said they would like their students to have.
Yeah, I think it's a great class. In my experience, a few schools that I know, and it'd be interesting to see what programs offer this class as far as what kinds of programs. But in my experience, it's taught as part of graphic design programs, and which, of course, related, but different program. Yeah, I'm just from my experience.
I have had my students take it too, so they're multimedia majors and they've never done anything except like on a computer, and they're a little nervous to go over to the art
Sure.
department, and they're in class with painters and sculptors, and that does hit them generally, again, and teaches them just all the compositional principles. So they come back in and they know rule of thirds, and they can line up people on thirds in their video or whatever. So I think it's good.
Okay, next one is COM 1307, Introduction to Mass Communication. Definite yes, definite no.
I think it was a definite yes.
Show of
I would-
hands,
I would
definite
say
yes,
yes.
because it seems to me that it's fairly unanimous.
Well, it's not. I guess it's not unanimous for me. Just one voice. I mean, I believe that this should be part of the core for a radio television major, and that the introduction to radio television film class should be the first class. That's sort of what I think. Is that how you do it, Erica? Maybe?
Generally, yeah. I mean, that tends to be the way it runs.
Yeah, I mean, I love both classes, and I think they're both important. There's a lot of overlap with those, and I think in a mass comm degree, Introduction to Mass Communication should be the introductory class. In a radio television film, or radio television program, or radio television film program, I think Intro to Art Radio TV should be that first level class. But
Which would be COM 13.
which should be 1335. So.
I would say as long as 1307 was part of the core, I have no objection to that. I think 1307 is just critical on so many different levels, so kind of mission critical.
Right. So can we figure out where it should fit? I mean, if we're in agreement to recalibrate that, can we figure out where it would fit in the core? Where would it make the most sense to fit it in the core? And we can make that decision, Alan, to say this class fits best in this part of the core statewide?
Well, we really can't do that because institutions have set up their own cores in their own ways.
Okay.
There's probably a 99% chance, right, that this course would fit into the, what part of the core is it? The society.
Language, philosophy, and arts, maybe?
Yeah,
Actually, it is society. It's kind of
society and culture.
Yeah, it's strange. It's kind of lumped in with sociology and various social sciences, at least in our core.
Institutions can put different
Yeah.
courses as checking off the box for different components of the core, and we can't really tell them to do that. And if institutions choose not to offer this course at all, I mean, there are 42 colleges that offer it. That's not all of them. So somebody out there isn't offering this, and so we can't specify that they must now offer it as part of their core curriculum. So you can assume it's going to go into the core in almost all places, but.
So we could recommend it. We could recommend it for the core. If a student takes it at any school, it would count in their field of study.
We can't even recommend it for the core. We can just assume that students will, when they choose their core options, they're also looking at the field of study and will use their heads and the common sense they have to figure out that if they take this course, they can kill two birds with one stone. Or we hope advisors will give them that direction. If students want to, or maybe they just want to, if a student wants to take some other class for that part of the core because it's really important to them, then they have the right to do that. And then they'll take Intro to Mass Comm as their field of study class and take something else for the core. We can't control their decision to do that.
Quite a few of you mentioned a significant amount of overlap between the two courses. Could this be an either-or scenario? Would the 4 years be that upset if they had an Intro to Mass Comm rather than an Intro to Electronic Media?
Well, if I'm reading this right, and I've already read this wrong 2 or 3 times, so help me out here, but on COM 1335, am I reading it right? 7 universities offer that? Am I looking at the right column? I just can't see the whole thing on my pad here.
See, we offer it, but we would call it Introduction to Broadcast.
13 colleges offer it and 5 universities.
Okay, yeah, COM 1335, Introduction to Electronic Media. Okay, so you've got, 13 colleges and 5 universities. And then if you compare it to COM 1307, which is offered a lot more. I think right as far as transferability, the COM 1307 can kind of kill that two birds because, and that's why now we put COM 1307 in our core, or in our core as an option out of communications, the communications component.
Right.
So you could get your associates, instead of speech 1315, you could take COM 1307.
See, I wouldn't be comfortable taking Intro to Mass Comm instead of Intro to Electronic Media in terms of as broadcast-specific majors. I would rather them take that Intro to Electronic Media or Intro to Broadcast.
I think
class
that's the
because it's
problem.
so specific.
Right. I think that's the problem, is that the numbers are big for Mass Comm because it's in the core. But that doesn't necessarily mean majors are taking it, like you're saying, Andrew, right? I mean, they might be as part of the core, and you hope they are, right? But they may not be.
Well, as I say, then your advisors need to, if you're not the one talking to them, then they need to say, okay, take COM 1307. It'll be your core. It'll be in the core. You won't be wasting a class. But for your major in the field of study, take COM 1335, and then when you go transfer to wherever, then you can, that account toward.
I think that's the way to address
Maybe
it.
that's a good way to approach it then.
Yeah, I would think in terms of content for the radio TV majors, 1335 makes more sense.
Okay.
Any other comments on this?
I was just going to say a college like mine is not going to offer intro to radio TV, but there are a few things that we might think are necessary that we're not going to offer.
So if you had a radio TV program, though, because I mean right now you have, is it Mass Comm? It's okay.
Well, one thing to keep in mind in the back of your mind is if institutions don't offer these courses or don't require them for the degree, and you can see from that checklist of the top 10 transfer institutions I gave you, there's very little consensus really about what programs have in common. You need to think about what could they transfer this in as. Like if we have if you put in intro to mass communication in the field of study, and then an institution doesn't require it, but they do require intro to electronic media, is it likely that they would transfer in the field of study class as the equivalent of that?
Probably not. I would think probably not.
Probably not.
I don't think that they would. I mean, I think Intro to Electronic Media is so specific in terms of, and again, Intro to Mass Comm is much more broad, that I don't want to speak for those that aren't here, but I mean, I wouldn't see transferring in the one instead of the other.
Yeah, I think it depends the school. I mean, I tend to think you're right, though. But one is much broader than the other.
At Texas State, I think there might be a transferability issue there with Intro to Electronic Media. We've got a course called Management of Electronic Media that gets deeper into just an intro type coverage. So I don't know if it would transfer or not.
And is that management class, first, second, third year?
Third year.
Third
year.
Well, if we make, whatever class we decide is part of the intro class for the field of study, ultimately it will substitute. It'll be up to the institutions to find the right substitution for the equivalency for the intro class, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just see the intro to mass comm as kind of one of those, a foundational class. It keeps nagging at my head. Maybe I'm wrong, but
the only thing I see is that
foundational.
if it's radio, this almost goes back to the radio and TV versus communication. I could see the Intro to Mass Comm more in that broad communication as it was configured, as we saw it, whether or not that's how it'll end up. And Intro to Electronic Media is more specific just for the radio and TV field of study.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of...
Yeah, I feel the same way, but it sounds, maybe we should vote and see what people think.
Well, I guess I have a question before we vote then. Are the four-year colleges looking for classes that are radio and television specific, or are four-year colleges looking for information and skills that are available in these more intro, broader classes that will make our students at least competitive or up to par in their four-year programs. Because my concern is that as we get more specific and focused on it's not a radio and television class, is that we are boxing out a significant number of students to even be able to utilize this FOS.
I agree with that. I think the functionality of this is something that was like how it was presented to us in the beginning, like here's the goal. And so if the goal has to do with being able to get these students through in these ways and to have the transfer students be on an equal plane with the native students, that this is a potential to start them off on an unequal plane, because now there's a course that the average two-year school does not offer, and so they can't even complete it with the very first course on the list.
Which of those classes?
This Intro to Electronic Media seems like a course, based on what I'm hearing. I'm not at a two-year school, so I don't know, but we don't even have that course, and I'm at a four-year school, so I mean, I don't know. But because we don't have it and some of the others in the room don't have it, maybe it would be helpful to talk a little more specifically about how this course is uniquely different from the Intro to Mass Comm, because I'm not clear on it. And it seems like some others maybe aren't either.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I know we offer both courses. And again, the way we tend to teach them, 1307 starts with, what does it mean to communicate, channel, receiver, message, noise, and the whole 9 yards. And then the course proceeds through the development and interrelatedness of all the various media components, books, magazines, newspaper, radio, TV, internet, and beyond. And so it tends to be this real high level, all industries eventually interacting through the internet, little thing, maybe you've heard of it, but that kind of an approach is the way we will generally teach it. And then 1335, again, focuses specifically radio, TV, and new media and how everything kind of works together that way. What I find interesting as I'm thinking about this, 1335 is right now a class that we teach exclusively online, and it is always full. Other classes can be lagging. And so, I don't know if we're just lucky to be offering it, but it does tend to be a pretty regular and consistent maker for us. So I don't know if that's because we are in the minority that actually offers this class. So I'm interested in how that kind of works together. That's just my perspective.
Well, the way you explain that works for me. Excuse me, the management of electronic media class I was talking about earlier would seem to match that description then. I know in the years that I've taught it, every year I teach it every fall. I also teach it online. I redo about half the course every time I teach it because of the developments that have happened within the industry. The fact that TV now is mostly streamed rather than broadcast, for instance.
Right. So do you teach it literally from I'm going to manage a television?
No, no. I teach in terms of the issues that managers face.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have all three of those classes. So we have Mass Comm, we have Intro to RTF, and we have a management class. We teach the management class like a studio management class. And we teach Mass Comm, I think more similarly to what you were talking about, Erica, and Intro to RTF, or we teach as Intro to RTF, is much more just in depth in the field. So the Intro to RTF is required. The Mass Comm similarly is a core kind of optional kind of thing. So anyways.
Could we consider, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to mention that we also offer Intro to Mass Comm at South Texas College, and the way that I approach that class is we do dive into the industries and go into books, magazines, newspapers, radio, television, and then all the new media. But then we also look at the effects, of course, on society, as is in the course learning outcomes. And so, but we dive into theory. They look at agenda setting, they look at diffusion of innovations, social learning. So they get that theoretical underbase to observe, okay, well, if I do go into this industry, what makes a person, how is somebody, well, how's my audience going to feel, going to think, going to act based upon what I create? So it really has an audience-centered aspect to it that I think is important in mass comm.
Catherine, you're going to?
I guess I would ask, like, which media are not electronic media that are a focus in the intro to mass comm, but that are not a focus in intro to electronic media?
Well, I don't even like the title, to be honest. I mean, I think it should be called Introduction to Digital Media. But, so it's a good question. I mean, I think the classes are really similar in a lot of ways. And, I said it before, but I think for a radio television major, to me, it makes sense that that's their first class. But having the mass comm as, this might be a way for us to move forward right now, is to keep both as an option, as the potential first option of both classes. Go look at all the other ones and see what we fit in, what we can fit in.
I'm open to it. I mean, I'm not, 100% against it. I'm just, was thinking more in terms of just the radio and TV. Yeah, you had.
Something that I've noticed that happens a lot at my institution is that students, when they transfer from a community college, they have something very specific like television and radio, but we don't have anything that's so specific, so sometimes they end up changing their major. So what I'm thinking is that if 1335 is a requirement instead of the 1307, then if they change their major, that might defeat the purpose of the whole thing too, even though they get the learning experience. And I agree with Derek with what he's saying. Truly, they learn, I think everything is digital nowadays, and they probably get the same skills. And we don't teach the course, we don't teach 1335, so it would truly just transfer as an elective. So I think at the same time it's defeating the purpose of what we're trying to do.
Interesting.
So and we've got, and we've had these same discussions. We had to create we didn't have to, we after looking at everything, we had to separate out the sort of the intro to mass comm. We had to create a new sort of class called Introduction to Digital and Social Media, just to cover those issues. We have a Introduction to Electronic Media class, which is now called the Electronic Media, or Introduction to Creative Media Industries class, but it's going to cover, and I don't know if anybody knows, didn't COM 1335 used to be called Survey of Radio TV? Right?
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was called Survey of Radio TV, I think, that class. But I think the question is, the field of study, are we just looking for these courses where we get kind of what Nancy just talked about? We want these students to have kind of a pyramid, a base. This is going to be the base, and maybe we just build upon it, and maybe the intro to mass comm might be a broader base for the field of study. But I agree, Andrea, I know exactly what you're saying, because that's the electronic media class is really that survey to radio TV. That, again, that's another
Covers the
foundation.
historical, foundation, which I think is so important for students and that kind of stuff. And that's something that's often missing in just a broad mass comm is some of that in-depth understanding of, the history and where things have come from. But but I understand what you guys are saying too in terms of the broad base. So.
Well, to me, my intro to mass media class is, I tell my students, it's the history of the technologies and how they impacted society. Like that's my one-liner for that course. And so we do go into the context of the more specific technologies. And I think that if you're going to be well-rounded in anything, to have the historical context of not just this microcosm that what you do, but the other things that are related to it is necessary.
That's great. And I think, if a student came to us with probably that perspective, we'd probably say yes. I think it just, again, it depends on how it's taught, though, right? It depends on what the content is. I mean, if
Right,
So
totally.
that's the issue.
Well, and as Catherine was saying, I think it's almost a little, what's the word I'm searching for? It's repeating, it's fractal. You know, if you look at books, a newspaper, they influenced what came next, which influenced which came next, and it all kind of builds together. So it's critically important, I think, in terms of context, in terms of understanding how the whole industry has developed and evolved and continues to evolve. But I do think it's fractal. I think it's repeating patterns over throughout, and if we can impress that upon our students, I think that's gold.
Well, student learning objective number 4 for 1307 says demonstrate understanding of evolving media technologies and relevant issues and trends. That's
And
probably
number 2 says historic, economic, political, and cultural realms. I mean,
right.
That's true.
I mean, as far as the 1335 thing and the 1307,
Yeah.
I guess I can envision someone taking 1307 at a 2-year school, and then when they get to a 4-year school, all right, hey, okay, that's fine, okay, that was accepted, but now you're going to take something radio, television type,
Right.
more specific. But if you're somewhere that you can take that class, and as long as, and if it's accepted by the 4-year school, I mean, I say more power to you, but I think just as a broad base, 1307.
I'm okay with that.
But, I mean, yeah, we can, Christian
I'm
mentioned
very
about moving on to,
Raymond, can I just ask a quick question? 1335, can you see that transferring into your broadcast management? You think that would work?
I think it would.
So if we had a student who came in that wanted to transfer that over,
Yes.
it would work. Okay.
Okay, so I guess we'll come back to that. Is that what we're planning? Okay. All right, so next class. So we have, let's see, I guess it would be,
Video production?
yeah, COM 1336. So what are our feelings about that?
I think we were okay with it. As several people mentioned, a name change to the course.
Or a description name.
Or
I go back
description,
to
I'm sorry, you're
requesting an
right.
or,
Description.
you know, to do this or ARTV 1351, which is the skills Derek described, where they're going to use camcorders instead of studio equipment, and they're going to get out and shoot and edit and do all that. But so they have the choice.
So that's why I wanted a description change, was if we were to say video instead of studio, it would broaden the applicability to a lot more schools.
I agree. I think that's it.
And I think it would be a lot more in line. Certainly, I know it would be more in line with the way we're teaching it, because yes, we teach studio, but I don't think you can teach studio without teaching field. I just really don't.
All right, and that'll give people options, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so change the description is the way
Yeah.
we would.
Do we
look
need
at
to
that.
make a motion to that effect?
Yep.
Okay.
Anyone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjust the course description for 1336 to include field production or video production overall, rather than limiting it to studio production. I don't know if that's how we want it to
Sure.
appear.
Do we
but-
hear a?
I'd second it.
Okay. All right, so we'll move forward with that as,
All in favor? Do we need to
all in favor?
All in favor? Yeah. The postings.
oppose?
Anyone opposed?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move forward with that as our first official class that we will put in the FOS and adjust the description eventually. Okay, so we'll come back to the description adjustment.
Well, there's 2 courses, right? Video production 1 and video production 2, right?
Yes.
Are you recommending that the name be changed for both?
We're not recommending the name be changed. We're recommending that the description be changed to be more.
So be clear on that. The wording of the motion was that the description be changed to what exactly?
To be more encompassing of, or less encompassing of broadcast production and video.
I think less encompassing of studio production.
Broadening
to-
beyond just studio production to include field production, video production overall.
I mean, I would just say substitute video for studio.
I wouldn't do that.
No? Okay.
Here, we can take a look at it and see.
Can we have it video production both in the field and in studio?
Or just say practical experience in operation, or let's see, in field, studio, field and studio production, video production.
Is there video that isn't included in field and studio that's necessary?
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
So this is out of my area of expertise, so I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. But is there a needed form of video production that does not fall under the field of, does not fall under studio or field? Because
The only thing I can think of there would be digital production, and that's kind of a separate course area, I would think. How much can you cram into a semester?
They're getting really good at pushing a lot more on us, aren't they? That was just my general question, right? Just if we made it video production, then and broadened it, and took, it just seems like to specify studio and field, depending on technology and trends in the industry within the next 5 years, is going to outdate that description within the next 5 years.
I agree. How about this? What if we said practical experience in a variety of production environments, including pre and post-production? That would include, that would include studio, field.
And it would give us flexibility going forward. I'm good with that.
Right, because moving forward, that could be anything. That could be AR, VR, mixed reality, content creation, whatever we want it to be.
In a variety of?
A variety of production environments.
Okay.
Sure. Do you want me to reread it? So no, basically what we're doing is we're changing the description for COM 1336, Video Production 1, to read practical experience in a variety of production environments, comma, including pre and post-production needs. Does that sound good?
This one also has learning outcomes. I don't know if we have to fix that too or not.
Let's see, including, it's the same as it is, which is including pre and post-production needs.
Including both pre and post-production needs.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Just taking out the operation of studio and control room equipment.
Yes.
Yes.
Did it previously say pre and post production?
It did say that before.
Are we being, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate here, are we being inclusive enough? Can we infer operation of studio and control room equipment as being included in that variety? I'm okay with it, but I just want to make sure I'm
That
not.
was one thing I was thinking of, whether we needed to, I mean, I guess it's in the eye of the beholder almost, you interpret it how you, and if we wanted to mention studio somewhere in there.
But then I would also want to add field as well, so that's kind of defeating the purpose.
Which is why we said a variety of production environments.
So I'm cool with that. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Outcomes are going to qualify that, right? So if you read through the learning outcomes, it's still very studio specific. But if we feel a need to qualify and limit a variety of a variety of video production, it seems that could be done in the student learning outcomes.
And I think if we look at the learning outcomes, identify video equipment necessary, demonstrate understanding of effective lighting, operate studio equipment, demonstrate ability to collaborate, effective and safe use of studio equipment, demonstrate basic camera operation, shot composition, multi-camera production, basic audio production techniques. I kind of feel like it's there.
Well, I think number one would identify, instead of just identify, it's almost identify and use or
use effectively, identify and use
video
effectively.
Equipment necessary for content production. Well, that can be field, it can be studio, it can be digital, it could be, but it's got to go beyond just identify.
Well, and it does in the next one, but they get really angry with the SLOs if you put more than one thing in one, right? So identify, they need to be able to identify it first.
That's a good point.
And then they can demonstrate it in SLO number 2. But I get yelled at they really get mad if you do more than one.
You're exactly right.
Well, and the identify part, that ties in with his change to the variety. identify video equipment, everybody here that's got a cell phone is carrying a piece of a video equipment. Yeah, so you've covered everything.
Well, yeah, I'm hesitant to tinker too much with those because of that exact point.
But
I just want to make sure that
it's consistent.
It's consistent, and that we're changing the, we're not changing the title, but we're changing the description to include not just studio, but
Yeah,
a wide
absolutely.
variety. And so I want to make sure those learning outcomes then reflect that variety and don't just focus on studio.
And I would
So
say that
I
they
have-
do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. If we took out the word studio from 3 and 5 and replaced it with video, I think it would do that. And you still get to keep studio in 8, which would be an important aspect, but the school would not have to have a studio to be able to do that.
I think that's a great point.
I think that works for me.
Yeah, I like that because you're right. The studio can still talk about the production, the studio dynamic, and the importance of that.
So operate video equipment to create content? Or do we need video content both?
So in 3, it would be instead of operate studio equipment, it would just be operate
equipment.
video. It would just be, we could just say operate equipment.
Yes. All right. So in my notes, I had take out the word studio from number 3.
Okay.
And in number 5, replace the word studio with video and leave the rest as is. And I feel that meets the needs as the committee has discussed them.
How do people
Unless I'm
feel?
missing something.
How do people feel about that?
I think that's all right, because video and just variety, video, that all,
And
it
still
just
hit
kind of takes care of everything.
Okay.
We have a motion to that effect then, accepting those changes to the description and then to the learning
And
outcomes?
it's right there. It's on the screen.
Yeah. So I make a motion to take out the word studio in SLO number 3 and replace the word studio with video in SLO number 5 as demonstrated on the screen.
And
Have separate committees for this.
Mhm.
And they meet periodically every several years. You might be interested in volunteering.
Again, with video production too, you could take out television studio and control room equipment and just have operation of video equipment. And again, that's a broad. The control room equipment is video equipment. Camera is video equipment. It would depend on how you define it, but that would get it away from just that specific studio focus.
It would provide flexibility for people, which I think is in this kind of program with equipment costs and such is important.
Well, again, I don't think we can change anything in the ACGM unless we're going to put it in the field of study. So I think I kind of withdraw my question.
Okay, and we're not. Yeah, no one feels that we're not even looking at
Not
video
offering
production
video
too.
production too in the field of
So we could make this change pending our final approval of putting 1336 in the field of study. If we don't,
study.
then we can make this recommendation to committee to consider,
Sure.
but we won't really have our authority behind it if we're not
Right.
including it in the field of study.
Okay, so let's move on to the next class.
We had the motion. Do we have a second?
Oh, we need to finish that.
are we still discussing before we call the question?
Sure.
Multi-camera production. Is everybody good with that language?
Where are we talking about?
Number 7, is it? No, 6. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a very specific meaning, and it doesn't mean having 3 iPhones tied together. So,
I could just stop at shot composition.
And shot, that's what I was thinking.
I think that's a good call.
That's what I was thinking, yes. Everyone else?
And then the word studio is also in number 7. I don't know if we want to leave that or not.
Would
That's
we
a
be
good catch on
okay,
7.
microphone types and mixing for various production environments in various?
I like that. And then we just cut out the studio.
Various production environments, yes.
That looks great.
And then 8 would remain as the studio component.
Right.
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 Yes.
It's the one place where studio works.
So we have a motion to accept it as it's written on the screen. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in
All in favor?
Opposed?
All right, we're moving on. Okay, what about, let's see, next class we had listed for potential, I believe it was COM 2300?
Media literacy. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about that as a FOS class for radio and television.
In review, I petitioned hard for this class, and I love the class, and I wish more colleges offered it, and I would hope that in the FOS maybe more colleges would offer it, but it is not offered very widely, and I don't see, I think more colleges doing it because it's in the FOS is a dream. So I withdraw my strong support for it, even though I do believe in the principles of it.
Any discussion on that?
Probably just a ditto. I would agree that it is critically important, and I would, I'll continue to offer it, and I know that, but I also understand and appreciate the perhaps overly broad nature of it for this context.
All right.
Great. Okay, well, let's move on.
I'll throw in my 2 cents for the record. I think I have the exact opposite perspective, even though I understand it's an unpopular one. Like I said before, I think it's a critically important class that every student in, especially media, any kind of media student should take, and just because of the media environment we live in, and it's a class that we offer that covers everything from the advent of digital series to phenomenon of fake news, and I think. While some of the other classes we're talking about touch on some of those things, I think it's not with a specific focus on media literacy, which is a very specific kind of class. But I understand.
Does anyone offer a common society class? And because we offer a communication society, and it seems to me that it might kind of be a little bit like media literacy. It's really looking at some of these, I guess. Common society is more looking at some of those sort of polarizing issues and both sides, but particularly the influence of the media and
That's certainly the way we teach it.
So I think I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't want to stall the decision making, but I feel the same. I just think this is like maybe the most important class on here, and so. I don't know, earlier there was a discussion about whether or not we wanted to think about categories, like, okay, so this is what this FOS contains, 2 writing courses, 2 this, 2 that, but that kind of thinking, I think, might help with some of this, because I think why I feel this one is important is because there's nothing else like it on the list, where people are spending time dedicated to thinking about the broader implications of the content. So it's not just content for content's sake. It's not just getting clicks or getting money, but this has a real impact on the world and on people. And so there's like a humanities element to it that I think media producers need. And if you look at the media environment we're in, there's a lack of this kind of consideration, or a seeming lack of it. And so that's why I think it's important. I mean, I'm not going to continue to fight it, but that's just why I feel that way. And so I don't know how this list is going to end up looking, but if we just have a bunch of create content courses and a survey course at the top, I think it's missing a critical component.
I think your point's well made. I think also your point's well made, and that is how many colleges or universities will actually end up still being able to teach the course. I mean, we can put it in here, and I think you make some really good points.
I mean, I'll be real honest. Now that I know that it's in the catalog, I'm going back to Blinn and petitioning to teach this, because I think, again, it's a class that everyone should be pushing.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it was an option.
Yeah, and I think and again, because because of limited resources, that's why I shoved the media literacy content into the Intro to Mass Comm class. But I do agree with everything that you said, and I have no issues adding it in a field of study if I don't have the manpower to offer 2,300 at our institution. I certainly can recommend to a student, when you get to, you should take this. Because remember that part of the class that you enjoyed the most, and that's my students enjoy that part the most, because I have them defend a controversial song lyric, and they have to give up and give me an oral presentation, which of course they love, and as part of that media literacy, and I tell them, I said, when you're done with this class, if you cannot look at television in any kind of a form or a commercial advertisement the same way again, then I've done my job. So I have no problem putting it in. I probably just wouldn't have the manpower to offer it and teach it, but I agree with everything you said.
Alan, I have a question about dual credit. Will dual credit be a part of field of study? So if a student, and the reason I say this, I think the last question that we have to fill out in our survey is related to teacher certification, or not teacher, is there a separate FOS needed for those working towards teacher certification in radio and TV?
Study. And if we do, that's fine, but I guarantee you we're going to hear about it in the public comments. And you need to be thinking about what our response to that as a committee will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a great point. And I think I would also say that on the flip side of that, I mean, from my perspective coming to this committee, is that I think it's our job to have vision and to look at what's best for programs, what we think is best. And so just because a college or the universities don't offer 8,000 sections of something, I'm not sure we should shy away from it, because I think we need to do what we think is best for our 2-year and 4-year partners. And if we're just adding classes that are already there and matching them up, then I think we're missing an opportunity. And again, this is not me as co-chair here, this is me as personal perspective. I think we're missing opportunities to really evolve programs in meaningful ways. So.
And just know that, again, we're up against the cap, the 120 hours. There's just, the opportunity to offer. And my sense is that a lot of colleges offer it, but just in different ways or different perspectival parts of, in not as just one course, but within varying courses. So, I mean, I can think of several courses where we would teach media literacy components, just not as that one specific course, but it's woven throughout our curriculum in a variety of different courses. Maybe part of it's in the intro course, and then maybe part of it's in some of the broadcast-specific courses or in the public relations courses or whatever. It's there, it's within, but being able to offer just a course on media literacy, it wouldn't be feasible, I don't think, at our institution.
If we would consider not putting it in, which, I understand the realistic constraints that would suggest us not putting it in, then I think that would make a double case for including the Intro to Mass Comm, where it is rolled into part of that curriculum.
I agree.
Yeah, I think my view on that is I think Intro to Mass Comm and Intro to Radio TV are too similar of classes in many ways, where I think media literacy is a very different class in some ways from either of those classes. I mean, I'd love to have all of those classes, but I don't know that we can, so.
Would it change? I don't know, this just popped in my head, this may be a bad idea, but we changed the description for one course already, which I mean, I totally am agreeing with. Is it possible, is it doable, under the description of COM 1307, okay, you have survey of basic content and structural elements of mass media and their functions and influences on society. Can we add, includes a component on media literacy? Or is that too?
Into the mass comm class?
Right, just includes a component.
I mean, as someone that teaches the course and does like you do and rolls it in, I always saw that as being implied, right?
Okay.
In mass media values, ethics, and
Right.
number 5, and then also number 7, media effects on society.
Right, well, that's why I threw it out there, because I was wanting to hear.
But I mean, I agree.
You said it better than I did. It was rolling around in my head, but
I mean, I see it as implied, but I also understand if we think it's something that is that important to the industry, that specifying it to make sure that it is always covered could be a nice compromise.
I would agree that it is implied. My one concern about, I guess, expressly adding it, and this is selfish, okay? I don't want to see 2300 go away, okay? And I would not, I understand that there are a lot of colleges out there, universities that don't offer it, but I absolutely agree with every positive thing that has been said about media literacy. I will probably continue to teach it until they tell me I can't. And I will, you know, I just think it's really, really important that we not take away from, and as both of you have said, I absolutely introduce a media literacy component in 1307, 1335 when I teach it, and all of those classes. I think there's room and there's standing, whether or not it is included in the radio TV field of study. I think it is so critically important that it has to stay there, and I don't want to risk anything that takes it away. And I don't know that that makes sense, and maybe I'm just imagining it that it's a possibility. It's critical, especially the degree to which, I mean, and we're already seeing research that our students don't get it. They're more exposed to news and information, but what, fake news? What is that? And they're so used to it, they've been swimming in it for so long, it's almost like they're blind to it a little bit. And unless we have a place to really talk about it and say, this is what's important, you need to understand that this stuff is going on, I just think that's dangerous.
I think 2 of the classes we've talked about so far, one of the potential issues has been that they're not offered widely enough. And so part of what we might have to think about is, are we just going to avoid those situations altogether? Or are we going to put one on the table? And if so, which one is worth putting on the table and kind of putting, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but to get places to start offering it more widely. And the way we've described these 2, the intro to electronic media is the other class I'm talking about here. And so I guess it's which one is more unique or which one has more overlap. And I'm biased because I teach media literacy and I don't know intro to electronic media, and so that's why I was trying to get like some info, but I still kind of don't know like what makes intro to electronic media different. But that's one way to, I guess, think this through is, okay, so like if we're going to put ourselves out there with this course that's not offered that widely, is there one that we feel like is worth all of that? And if so, why?
Yeah, so Alan, I have a question. Is there any precedent for a course being listed in FOS that was not widely offered, but because it was included, it did see a rise in adoption?
Well, the fields of study generally are pretty new, so we don't have enough data coming in really to say for sure, but inevitably, yes. If we put a course in the field of study, then all those students who are now kind of floundering around picking a course here or there will be gravitated instantly toward the course that they know will count and transfer. Conversely, courses that are not in the field of study may see their enrollments fall, especially at community colleges. So courses that are kind of hanging on by a thread now, if a student has a choice of taking media literacy or video production, and they're torn between the two, and one of them's in the field of study and the other one isn't, the student who may have been signing up for media literacy will now be the one signing up for video. So yes, enrollments will go up in the field of study courses, and they'll go down in the courses that aren't.
And you mentioned earlier that if we include something, or if a student, let's say, takes all the classes in the field of study except for one because their school doesn't offer it, all the other ones still transfer. Yes.
Right. Okay. That's right. And this is where you have to be ethical yourselves on this committee, is you can't be thinking about, I don't want my course to die, therefore I want to put it in the field of study. There's another committee that will go nameless who was all about that, and there was a pitched battle between the 4-year people and the 2-year people about this, because the 2-year people wanted desperately to hold on to certain sets of courses. And they were fighting to put that in the field of study, and the 4-year institutions were fighting back, saying, we don't have these in our degree program, we don't have any use for them, we can't put them anywhere. But the 2-year people, and I feel bad for them. I mean, they're talking about there are teachers here who've worked here for decades. You know, people are going to lose their jobs if these courses aren't in the field of study. Their enrollments are going to fall. But your job here today is to block all that out, right, and speak for the whole state, not for your institution. You're here representing the whole state to determine which courses really need to be in the field of study, and the enrollments and the staffing and the offerings over time, that will all find its level and will settle itself out. Any course that's still in the ACGM and has the enrollments to remain in the ACGM will still be available as core curriculum options, as free electives.
I mean, I would argue the opposite of your concern, though, in that for media literacy, almost every person in the room has said that they see a need for this in our curriculum and in the industry, and it's a growing need, not one that's dying. And by putting it, and gosh, I feel bad for flip-flopping, but by putting it in the FOS, right, perhaps we could guide our colleges and universities in creating a curriculum that benefits our students and the industry.
We could instill meaningful change with the focus of serving students, fundamentally.
Exactly, and just be prepared that if we're asked about it in this uproar or backlash or feedback, then, stand your ground and explain the reasoning.
And show them that Nielsen report of 10 hours of media consumption every day.
I mean, I understand.
Well, video.
I understand what you guys are saying, but I don't see how it would, where we would be able to substitute them, what class we would. Like I said, it's interwoven throughout, and somebody's going to come and say, all right, I've completed this course, and I'm afraid we're just going to have to say, well, that's great, I'm glad you've got that course, it's a much needed course, but I don't have a course that you can substitute it for. And so, I mean, to me, that's the other. And it's not that I don't like it. It's not that I don't believe in it. And I think the approach that we've taken is some of the stuff, we understand it and we just interweave it within a lot of the courses that we take so that it's reinforced over and over so that there is that media literacy component. Whether you're teaching TV production, whether you're teaching radio production, whether you're teaching intro, whether you're teaching reporting, there's media literacy within every single one of those courses.
No, I completely appreciate that perspective, but I think, and again, I'm completely biased, and I'm speaking as someone who's taught media literacy at the 4-year college at UT Austin. In my experience, talking about teaching media literacy across the curriculum, very often media literacy part gets shortchanged because you're focusing on the production and so forth. Not that it has to be, and there are teachers that do it fantastically, but it's not widespread. And I think having class that focuses specifically on media literacy makes sure that doesn't get shortchanged.
So, Alan, I know it's new, but so what happens if, because in the report it shows no 4 years require it. Now I understand how you worded it. I understand that I don't think media literacy is required of the creative media industries degree program. So my question is, what happens when all the 4 years come back and say, that's not acceptable? Where does that put us as a committee? Say, well, do it anyway?
Well, after the 30-day comment period, we'll have to respond to all those public comments. And if people come in and say, no, we don't want this in the field of study, and a majority of the committee votes in response to keep it in, then I have to summarize all of the public comments in an agenda item that goes before the full board, the full Higher Education Coordinating Board. And I have to summarize our committee's response to that comment. It's usually just 2 or 3 sentences. And I would say something like, after thorough discussion, the committee decided that issues of media literacy are critical and that the issues cannot be adequately covered in Introduction to Mass Communications. Therefore, the committee rejects the proposal. It would be, I don't know, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but something along those lines. Then the board has the final authority on accepting the field of study. So if the members of the coordinating board felt like the field of study needed to be changed, they could do that. That would be really strange and rare if that happened. But if they did, that's potentially could happen. And then that would be the final say on the field of study. Or I don't know, or maybe they would probably kick it back to the committee if the board had a strong objection to it. I suspect that'd be the case. But if that's what this committee decides and what the board approved, then it becomes state law that institutions have to accept the field of study and apply it to their degree program. And then in 5 years, we'd come back and review it. If there was a lot of pushback and a lot of hostility and many problems were reported about this, we have the option of calling you all back in 1, 2, 3 years. And we don't have to do it every 5 years. We could do it sooner than that to review the field of study from scratch and maybe assemble another committee with some new members after 1 year. After those of you who drew a 1 were rotate off the committee, we'd get some new members. And I don't know, we could do that, but I'd hate to have to do that. And, whether they want us to get it right the first time.
Well, let me ask something real quick. Just, Andrew, I know you mentioned that you don't have anything that you could segue that into, that you could
That I can think of right now.
that you could,
And
okay.
again,
Todd, do you guys have anything at Tech?
We have a class called Media Literacy.
Okay.
So that'd be,
And for your university, Dr. Garcia? What?
No, we don't have a media literacy course, but what I've been doing, I've been teaching media literacy in my Introduction to Mass Comm and my new media class.
Okay, but if someone took COM 2300 at Austin and then they show up at West Texas A&M, can you accept it? Well, you're registered.
It will be an elective.
Okay, and what about our 4-year?
but I'm going to qualify my answer.
Okay.
Just because we offer the course doesn't necessarily mean that it's a requirement of this particular group of students that would be doing this field of study. So if they were to come in as a creative media industries major,
Yes.
they're not required to take media literacy as a course. Now, it could form as elective, but then all of a sudden we're going to be taking, again, I'm trying to be ethical, represent the state, but I know that we will get pushback because we're going to take a credit from, we would be required to take a credit from the creative media industries major, probably, to put in media literacy.
Okay. And 4-year, Derek?
We have the course.
You have it?
What for you guys?
Okay.
Some institutions may offer it at the upper division or some variety of it at the upper division, and they would
Okay.
transfer it in as the equivalent of that, hopefully, if their rules allow them to accept
Right.
lower division courses as upper divisions. But I'll call your attention to this little page. It might not be completely accurate, but it's a breakdown of the lower division courses that are required as part of the program for the top 10 transfer student receiving programs. You'll notice that A&M isn't on here not because it's a small program, but because they don't receive as many transfer students. But you can look down the column on the left and see the kinds of courses that are offered in the various course titles, and you can judge for yourself which of these courses, if any, would be similar enough to media literacy that they could transfer in as equivalents.
No, probably media and society would be about the only one. Or fundamentals of human communication.
But Nancy, you said that West Texas offers it?
No.
Does it?
Teach media literacy, but in the component.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
And our communication society is an upper level class, and again, I can't speak for the department as to whether or not they would substitute, media literacy for that particular course.
Is the description of media literacy in the ACGM sufficient and accurate? Have we looked at it? It's since we have the power to control the revision, that it is missing a period at the end of the description, which I've been looking at for years.
If I'm reading this spreadsheet of the top 10 transfer institutions right, it seems like there are very few courses that that a large number even of these schools require, apart from intro to mass comm and writing for print and digital media. The rest are like one school, maybe two schools. So it seems like, and again, maybe I'm not understanding this right, but it seems like we have the same problem. Like the schools where all the transfers are going aren't similar enough where there's going to be like, some people are going to have to make adjustments, basically, is what this suggests to me. I don't know if
Right, and that could be really challenging.
So the description, if you don't have it in front of you, is criticism and analysis of the function, role, and responsibility of the mass media in modern society from the consumer perspective. Includes the ethical problems and issues facing each media format with the effect of political, economic, and cultural factors on the operation of the media. Is that, do you feel like those issues, that definition is not included sufficiently in Introduction to Mass Media?
Introduction to Mass Comm, 1307.
I'm sorry, Mass Comm,
Yeah,
1307. That's kind of the central question here is...
See, I think it is. I mean, I don't think you can teach Intro to Mass Comm without doing what they talk about in media literacy, but...
To me, it's a matter of depth, though. You know, I mean, with everything that we have to cover in 1307 in a 15 to 16 week semester, again, we've said this that we all kind of intersperse a variety of media literacy issues throughout that curriculum, but in terms of analyzing it, role and responsibility, interacting with the consumer and in society, it's touched on. My contention is still that we don't have the hours in the day to do the material justice from 2300. As a part, I mean, yeah, we talk about it all the time in a variety of classes, and hopefully it all comes together. I still see the value of a separate course that says, this is what the situations are, let's talk about this in more detail. And again, that's...
And see, the one other issue I'd bring, and I think this is where not all institutions are the same, is that we're a blended department, so we have communication classes as well as broadcast classes or public relations classes. And so Media and Society, for example, is a communication class. It's an elective. It's an upper level class. But I don't have anything in the broadcast sequence, if we're looking at just radio and TV, that I could take out and substitute for this class. And so now we're going outside of just my radio and TV area, and we're going into communication in general, which is where I think something like this fits more in the communication field of study than it does just in the radio and TV
And I
field of
totally
study.
get that.
Yeah, I totally get that too.
You know, we may have to think that, and that's why part of the discussion we had too on the intro to mass comm, but we're talking about this is a radio and television field of study. You know, even those of us that don't offer media literacy, a course separate, want to offer it, you know, and believe in it, but we may just have to think about this is the field of study. But I would say in a communications field of study, if that, I know that's a separate committee, but I would tell them definitely, you know, if you can put this in there, that'd be great. Because a lot of, and universities do offer some communication stuff that I bet you they could figure out a way to fold it in.
Fair enough.
Okay. So how do you think we should proceed, Andrew? I'm very close to this, so I'm deferring to you as far as the next step. Should we vote? Should we move forward and talk about it tomorrow morning? Or
okay, it'd
be great if we could move one forward and try to have a
we need
small
to be
victory.
done by 5. We've got 5 minutes left, and we need to finish at 5 or before. So I think what we do is is there somebody willing to make a motion to include this in the field of study? If so, now's the chance. If not, then we will pass. And I don't know, Ellen, if we can make a recommendation to another field of study committee, if it can be included, if it just says that the radio and TV field of study committee would recommend that they consider strongly including media literacy as part of their field of study. That may be a solution if everybody's agreeable. I don't know, any other thoughts on this?
If that's within our purview, if we can make a recommendation like that, it's just a recommendation.
Sure, it's just a recommendation. I can't promise still. I'll be sure to pass it along and give it the full force of a motion that was made,
But,
and we'll see what happens.
Maybe we'll maybe it'll spark some discussion in that committee. So,
Okay.
all right, I say we move
Motion
on.
to adopt
yeah,
the course
there's a
into the field of
pass.
study? No?
There is, I don't think,
Motion been made,
no, the
right?
motion has not been made. There's no motion. Okay. Well, given the time constraints, I don't think we should move on any further. I think we need to be finished, so we will continue tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I believe.
8:30 to give the time
8:30,
to-
8:30 in the morning. So is there a motion to adjourn for the day?
Motion to adjourn. Oh, second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, and we'll
Great.
see
Thanks,
you
everyone.
tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you all. I hope hope your hotel bed is all right and your pillow is okay and you get a decent night's sleep. I appreciate all of your patience and energy today. Thanks. I'm looking forward to it tomorrow.